Chapter 1247. A Jew raised her furry little head and reached out to touch the place where Bai Juan had kissed her. Her big round eyes looked at Bai Juan in confusion. She did not understand why her little brother would say that he would not forget such a thing. Even if she left the Bai family, she could still write to her little brother often. Moreover, it was not like they could not see each other anymore. She was just following her mother and the others home to live. A Jew's thoughts were indeed not wrong, but she did not know that once she left the Bai family, Bai Juan would not continue to stay at home, since he already had a guaranteed spot in universities from various countries. Then he just needed to choose a university and join the army in advance. A Jew would not know about these things. Bai Juan's deep eyes looked at her for a long time before he said in a low voice, "Let's go back. Don't let your parents wait." His handsome and fair side profile was as gentle as ever. His jade-like eyes seemed to be completely occupied by that small figure. A Jew raised her small face and looked at his cold and slender figure. After thinking for a while, she still felt that she should tell him what she was thinking just now. "Little brother, don't worry. Even after I return home, I will often write to you. When the time comes, you can read my letter and reply to me." Bai Juan looked at her big black and white eyes and could not bear to lie at all. The army he was going to join in the future was one that could not receive any information from the outside world. Moreover, when he did not have enough ability to protect her, he would not appear in front of a Jew so easily again. He had to pay more attention to her two brothers. There was also that CEO Jew who had not spoken much from the beginning to the end. These people would probably set up obstacles for him in regards to a Jew in the future because of the Gu family's matter. He had to become a person who could convince himself before he could convince others. A Jew saw that Bai Juan did not speak, so she did not continue to speak. The two of them stared at each other in silence for a long time. Bai Juan then said indifferently, "Let's go back first." Hearing this, a Jew's bright eyes could not hide the disappointment. Was it not convenient for her little brother to write to her? That did not matter. When she became the host, she would think of a way to tell her little brother. She seemed to hesitate for a moment, and then suddenly bent down her small body that wasn't considered tall. Her soft fingers brushed past her ankle, and she untied a sarira. She held the relic in her hand and raised it in front of Bai Juan. Her voice was soft as she said, "Little brother, this is for you. This was given to me by my master after I was sent to the temple. He said that it was the relic of an eminent monk. Although it's not as good as the purple jade Buddha head you gave me, it's still okay." Bai Juan's deep gaze fell on the relic lying in her palm. He was slightly stunned. "For me?" "Yes." A Jew nodded her little head and said very seriously, "I have the purple jade Buddha head that little brother gave me. Little brother doesn't have anything. What if he goes out and encounters a demon?" Bai Juan did not believe in gods and demons, but he would never refuse the things that a Jew gave him. Seeing that her little brother had taken her gift, a Jew immediately revealed an incomparably brilliant smile. She stretched out her small hand and grabbed Bai Juan's sleeve, meaning that she wanted Bai Juan to hold Alaska's hand. She pulled Bai Juan's sleeve and walked forward. In the deep night, the north wind blew past. The snow and dust that filled the sky bore witness to this young parting. At that time, a Jew did not know that she would never see her little brother again. It was said that not long after the Bai family's banquet, other than Gu Cheng's bloodline, the entire Gu family was defeated beyond recognition. The person who made the move was not Hellion Vivian and the others, but the rumored young master Bai who had begun to take over the Bai family. In the same year, before the spring festival, at the distant border, near Nepal, beside the vast snowy mountains, suddenly, a long sound came from afar. It was a military truck. Under normal circumstances, such a car's license plate was very hard. It was a truck that would only pass through with special permission. It was different from other trucks. Although this truck looked very big from the outside, there were less than 7 soldiers sitting in the carriage. Each of them looked different, but there was one thing that was the same. That was they were all less than 30 years old. Some people said that in Huaxia, the peak age of man's physical strength was between 23 and 29 years old. Therefore, when selecting elites, they would also choose according to this standard. Under normal circumstances, 26 years old was the most common because people at this age would gradually stabilize their state of mind and become a real soldier. But this time it was very strange. There was actually a youth who looked even better than a celebrity on the truck. The rest of the people even doubted whether he had graduated from high school or not. Moreover, he did not look like a rough man at all. Instead, his entire body exuded a kind of carefully cultivated nobility. The most different thing was that the youth was even calmer than them. Ever since he got on the bus, he had been quietly leaning in the corner. Although he did not close his eyes, he was very indifferent. Everyone in the carriage was wearing camouflage clothes. It had to be said that the camouflage clothes in the army were really a test of one's figure. Those who did not have a good figure wore it, as if it was bought from Taobao for dozens of yuan. Only those with a good figure could wear this outfit with a refreshing look. It was believed that the students who had undergone military training had experienced it. However, there were very few people like this youth who could wear the camouflage clothes with such vigor. That set of clothes seemed to have been specially made for him. Every line was perfectly sculpted. Everyone couldn't help but look at the young man. Different thoughts flashed through their calm eyes. These people were the cream of the crop that had been carefully selected from various military regions and units. Under normal circumstances, the selection process was very strict. They had to go through the professional training and special screening of the local forces. One person was chosen from each unit. Only all the soldiers in the war could come here. But this youth, did he really have such great ability? Moreover, even if they came here, they would become nothing in the next second, because this was the most elite special forces brigade in the country. Only the best soldiers were qualified to stay in this place. Here, every soldier had to forget their names and use code names to replace them. Even their identities would be concealed layer by layer. It was only for training to be the best to deal with foreign enemies. But how could such a place let a high school student who had not even grown hair come to? Everyone doubted the youth's ability. At this time, the truck stopped. A loud shout came from outside. "Get off! All of you get off!" Chapter 1248. The few people in the military truck were like startled beasts. Their movements were very agile. They carried military backpacks and jumped down one by one. After letting them go, the military truck drove away with a rumble. They didn't even give these recruits a chance to regret. The sun slowly set. In the distance, there was an endless stretch of snowy mountains and a dense forest beside them. This kind of terrain was the most suitable for jungle combat training, as expected of the flying tigers' sharp blades. Even the location was different from the other troops. Those people looked at each other and saw excitement in each other's eyes. But the strange thing was, why didn't anyone come pick them up? Other than the words, "Get off," they heard in the car. The surroundings were completely quiet. There was not a single person in sight for miles in the wilderness. Where are they? Could it be that they're hiding and want to give us a surprise? Just like when we were new recruits. That's good. It's best if there's meat to eat. After sitting in the truck for 2 days and 1 night, I want to eat a good meal now. These few days, I've been eating compressed biscuits until my mouth is almost empty. Just as these men were conversing with each other, talking and laughing, the young man's left ear suddenly moved. He turned his well-defined, handsome face, and a trace of ice-cold sharpness flashed across his deep and pure black eyes. "No one's here yet? All right, let's introduce ourselves first. My name is Li Leitang. I'm from the new city. What about you?" "My name is Baidali. My hometown is Linshi." "White coat. This name of yours is really artistic." "It's not a white coat, it's a black coat." "It's the same anyway." "Brother, what about you? Where are you from?" "Let's talk about our troops." "I'm from the army." "What about you?" "Me? From the sea." "I heard that the Navy's selection is very strict." "It's not as strict as the army. It's not easy for you to have a special forces soldier." At this point, a few people's gazes landed on the young man who had not spoken. He seemed to be looking at something, but also seemed to be looking at nothing. It was just that his young side profile gave people a noble and sharp aura. "Hey, little brother, which army are you from? Where are you from?" The young man glanced at them. His eyes were as deep as a well, giving people an unfathomable illusion. "Viper." "What?" Those people wondered if their ears were playing tricks on them. One of them sneered, "Codename?" At this time, He was still using a code name to replace his real name. Was he unwilling to say which unit he was from? Or do you not want others to know how you were chosen? The young man glanced over and glanced at him indifferently, but didn't say anything. Perhaps it was because of his attitude that the man's sneer deepened. I really didn't expect the local government to be so corrupt. What kind of place is Liren? They actually dared to send anyone here. I don't know how much family connections they used. However, little brother, as someone who has been there before, let me give you a piece of advice. Look at me and that Lu Jun who looks twice as strong as you. Each of us has endured a few years in the army to get here. This experience is not something that a person who entered the selection based on his background can have. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Liren is not a place where you can enter as you please. Even if you enter, you won't have the strength. When the time comes, you will only die. Since your family has power and influence, why don't you enjoy life at home and give other real soldiers a chance? Don't be like this. We will be comrades in the future. What comrades? I don't have such a comrade. He has soft skin and tender flesh. When the time comes for a mission, he will drag us down. Ask him if he dares to touch a gun. Don't be like this. When the time comes, the people of Liren will be the judge, but everyone should be peaceful. Peaceful. Before the other person could finish his words, they heard a bang. Something seemed to have exploded beside them. Originally, such firepower was enough to wipe out all 6 of them. However, no one expected that the moment the smoke rose, a cannoneer hiding in the bushes beside them had a gun pointed at his head. That person was too fast and caught him off guard. Just as the cannoneer noticed that he was not within the range of the cannon, he had already appeared in front of him. Just like that, like a god of war descending, he looked down at him from above and used the muzzle to block his next second of bombardment. Although they were all using ash bombs, this kind of ash bomb would leave a rich color on their clothes. This was the ash bomb that every army would use when fighting in the jungle. However, the ash bomb used here was too similar to a real bomb. So the moment the sound was heard, the other 5 people turned to the other side. Their ears were still buzzing. When they opened their eyes again, they saw the young man holding a long gun in his hand, pointing straight at a certain place in the jungle. What was going on? Hey, I didn't expect to leave one behind. The cannoneer who was pointed at by the gun was still surprised at first, but now the corners of his mouth had turned into a faint, playful smile. Do you think you can reverse the current situation by yourself? As the cannoneer spoke, he secretly made a gesture in the direction behind the young man. He thought that his professional code words and silent actions would not be noticed at all. Unexpectedly, the young man moved away from the muzzle pointing at him in the next second. He turned around unexpectedly and directly pressed the long gun against the head of the person who was about to sneak attack him. That person was stunned, and then he frowned. According to the rules, you shouldn't make gestures anymore. However, as a new recruit, it's natural for you to give in to the veteran. Now, you should have died in battle, together with your companion. After the young man finished speaking, he still pointed his gun at the person. He turned his body, and his voice was indifferent. It was indescribably cold. The companion he was referring to was none other than the cannoneer who had been pointed at by him earlier. When the cannoneer heard the young man's words, he was so angry that he couldn't vent his anger. Even if you really gave in to them, don't say it out loud. You're clearly saying it on purpose. This is even more embarrassing than us losing to a recruit. Motherfucker, where did this new recruit come from? Why was he like a high school student, but when he made a move and spoke, he was so annoying? He could almost imagine how his comrades in the military camp who were watching the real-time surveillance video would laugh at them. Damn it, why was there such a variable this time? Chapter 1249. Clearly, the previous batch was not like this. Their artificial smoke bomb had completely wiped out the other party. Therefore, at that time, he even boasted in front of the captain that the 2 of them were enough for this batch. It was enough to give these new soldiers a show of strength. He did not expect that the sneak attack would fail and that he would be threatened by someone with a gun. In fact, those 5 people were indeed quite easy to deal with, except for the one in front of him. Thinking of this, the cannoneer narrowed his eyes and said to the youth, "Since you know that we are veterans, hurry up and put away your gun." After the youth heard this, his thin lips curled up. That smile more or less had the meaning of winter snow melting, so handsome that it was somewhat unreasonable. He turned his head and exerted force with his arm. With a click, he saw that there was not a single bullet in the gun compartment. Seeing this, the cannoneer cursed again. Damn it! I've been fooled. Where did this scourge come from? Why are you so scheming? You're still so stubborn, even though you don't have any bullets in your gun. You can really pretend. The other person didn't say anything because he noticed the thin layer of calluses on the youth's hand. Although it wasn't as obvious as the tip of the index finger, it could be seen with a closer look. Not everyone would leave calluses on the tip of their thumb. Only those who were used to using long-range spears would be able to leave such a mark on their hand. Could it be that this was a sniper? All right, take out the gun that you used to act cool. The cannoneer's personality was very carefree. The sharp blades are so welcoming. Your batch is considered qualified, right? You don't have to be sent back to your original army. Hey, those few over there, have you been blown silly? If you haven't been blown silly, then line up and register immediately. Hearing this, the other 5 people also understood what was going on. It turned out that all the ambush attacks, just now, including the sudden bombing, were all tests of their reaction and observation ability. However, they did not notice it at all. At the moment of the explosion, their entire minds were blank. They thought that they had encountered some foreign invasion attack. One of the 5 people felt as if his face had been punched head-on. It was burning with pain. He could not say whether it was shame or something else. Depression pressed down on his chest, making waves of stuffiness. If it wasn't for the extraordinary quick-wittedness of the youth he was mocking, they would all be dead by now. Not only that, but they might also be sent back to their original units. This made him feel lucky, but also made him feel like he had been slapped in the face. Even now, he did not believe that this young man had been selected based on his own strength. At the end of the day, he was just lucky. Perhaps he had already discovered the people hiding in the forest. He just didn't tell them and wanted to be in the limelight. Thinking of this, the man took a step forward, clicked his heels, and saluted the 2 people who greeted them, and said in a loud voice, reporting, Lint, Marine, 114 reporting. They only asked you to report your designation. No one asked you to report your name, and no one asked you to report your military branch. The cannoneer glanced at him. We heard your self-introduction just now. Number 114, right? When you introduce yourself in the future, you can say your code name or your number. But there is one thing you must remember when you come to Sharpblade. Don't say your name, because a name can leak too much information, not to mention that you even said your original unit. This makes people wonder if you have undergone professional confidentiality training. Lint's face alternated between red and white. He had revealed his identity as a Marine in order to let people know his achievements. But he did not expect to be reprimanded like this. He was one of the top elites in his original unit. He had always been praised, and it had been a long time since he had been treated like this. Moreover, this person had specially brought up the matter of his name. Was he trying to curry favor with that brat? Lint was very unconvinced. But this was Sharpblade, so he had to obey. Yes. The cannoneer glanced at him again and did not say anything else. In any case, after a few days of grinding like this, he would become obedient. If he was not obedient, he would directly return to his original unit. What about you? He turned his head and continued to ask. Following that, everyone reported their numbers, including the young man. Very good. Now line up in a line. The cannoneer carried the long gun in his hand. I still need you to run for a while. Lint still felt uncomfortable thinking about it. After all, he had just arrived and had lost face in front of so many people. How could he continue to mingle when the time came? So after lining up, Lint opened his mouth again. Reporting. Speak. The gunner furrowed his brows. Lint glanced at the youth intentionally or unintentionally. He continued. Sir, I heard that Sharpblade has never paid attention to special conditions. No matter how powerful or influential you are, you'll not be selected. You have to go through a strict selection. Under normal circumstances, those who can be selected in a Sharpblade are all over 23 years old. They have amazing results in their original unit. Even their psychological quality and professional knowledge have to be strong before they can be selected. But now, I want to ask if Sharpblade selection is still the same as before. The cannoneer stopped walking and turned around to look at him. Are you questioning Sharpblade? Not at all, Lin shouted and then looked at the youth. I just feel that some of my comrades are too young. Anyone who heard this knew who he was referring to, because it was too obvious. He spoke to his age and then spoke to his background. When a youth heard this, he turned his head. The smile on his mouth did not reach his eyes. Instead, it was cold and lazy. When the cannoneer saw this, he also laughed. I say, are you mistaken? If it weren't for the young comrade you mentioned, your batch would have gone back long ago. Would we have kept you until now? None of the 5 of you reacted quickly. How dare you say that you're from the Navy? You don't even have the least bit of vigilance. Are you doubting Sharpblade? If you don't want to come, then get lost. This is not a nursery. Lin's face was completely drained of blood. He seemed to be extremely angry, and his chest heaved. I don't mean anything else by saying these words. I just want to ask clearly. Could it be that Sharpblade can't stand to ask now? How is Sharpblade? It's not something that someone like you who likes to use your own thoughts to guess others can understand. What's wrong with the Navy this year? They recommended a person who likes to gossip. Didn't your original unit tell you that when you come to Sharpblade, you should shut your mouth? Chapter 1250. The cannoneer was really infuriated by Lin T's words. Sharpblade was China's special forces. Every time they did something, it would not be recorded. In other words, even if some of them bled or even sacrificed themselves, no one would know. When they protected the country, all they wanted was a little trust. When they picked up their guns and opened their eyes, their first thought was this territory. The special forces soldiers she saw on TV were not them either. Sharpblade had always been particular about coming and going like the wind. They would not walk in front of the curtain. This was the combat characteristic of China's special forces. Everyone who came here had to forget their true selves. They only had to remember one sentence at all times: protect the country from being invaded. They could not reveal their identities for missions that needed to be completed outside the country. Once the information was leaked, the problem they would face was not as simple as a mission failure. Therefore, even if they were captured, they could not leave any traces of belonging to the army. Sacrifice yourself to keep the secret. This might sound unbelievable. However, everyone in the Sharpblade did this. However, it was such a self-righteous person who touched the bottom line of the cannoneer's heart every time he asked a question. He reached out and pulled Lin T's clothes over. His face was close to him. Either endure it or get lost. You, Lin T sneered. Then, he pushed the cannoneer's arm away. So be it. I don't want to stay in such a Sharpblade. If my family has power and influence, I can enter. What's the difference between this and the other troops? The officer who received the new recruits is so obviously biased. What fierce tiger of China? I think it's just worthy of its name. The cannoneer's eyes darkened. He stared at the Navy called Lin T. Lin T looked like he was saying, even if you accept other people's benefits, even if I return to my original army, I won't be chased away by you. I don't want to stay here. He even made himself look like he had a backbone. The cannoneer was so angry that he clenched his left hand. Before he could move, then a loud bang was heard. A bullet brushed past the left side of Lin T's face. The shooting technique was extremely accurate. If there was even the slightest deviation, Lin T would definitely be injured. However, it was obvious that the other party was just warning him. Lin T's gaze immediately changed. His entire body was shocked. The young man took his gun and walked over. His voice was very indifferent. First, who told you that I came in because of my family's influence? Secondly, haven't you been guessing that there's someone in my house? I can answer you right now. My family does have a lot of power, but I don't need that kind of power to beat someone like you. Lin T was simply choked by the youth's arrogance. He was just about to say, why are you so arrogant? Aren't you relying on the older generation? Right at this moment, an off-road Hummer ferociously drove over from a distance, interrupting the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Only the word Tang was written on the car, not to mention the cannoneer who came to welcome the new recruits. Even Lin T knew what the word Tang meant. The Tang sect was established with the sole purpose of solving special cases outside of the country. Unless one was a rare talent of the country, Even if one's father was a first-class military officer, it would be difficult for one to enter this group. What made people concerned was that Liren had not yet undergone the internal selection. Why were they here? Just as the cannoneer was feeling puzzled, he saw a person walk out of the car. His face was calm. He could not be said to be handsome, but his morale was absolutely intimidating. Bai Juan, a soldier of the land, sea, and air forces, step out. A soldier of the land? Who was so awesome? Since when was such an all-round talent able to be trained in this place? Just as everyone was about to be shocked, the young man with the gun took a heavy step forward with his military shoes. His military uniform was straight and stunning. Here, that's right. This young man was none other than Bai Juan, who had joined the army. Compared to when he first joined the army, his skin color was a little darker. However, this only made him more angular. Under the reflection of the military uniform, his deep eyes seemed to be able to hold the mountains and rivers of the world, causing people's eyes to light up involuntarily. We've been waiting for you for a long time. I heard from young Master Tang that your computer is very good, right? Do you know how to attack the network? The person beside the car looked at Bai Juan with an expression of being saved. We all have equipment. Bai Juan's voice still did not change much. I've learned it. Don't be modest. Before you came, the commander of your original army gave me a call. At such a young age, you turned defeat into victory by yourself in a jungle battle and directly destroyed the enemy's regiment commander. Such a grand feat is rare in the army. I heard that the commander of the enemy's battle was extremely angry because of you. When that person said this, he patted Bai Juan's shoulder very straightforwardly. What we need is a comrade like you. You're shameless and black-bellied. Bai Juan's expression was indifferent. You flatter me. It's just that Chief Zhao's temper is more hot-tempered. No wonder the other party's chief was angry. This soldier was not afraid of anyone. That person seemed to have obtained a treasure and laughed out loud again. Quickly get in the car. I'll give you a mission first. Okay. Bai Juan supported himself with one hand and jumped into the car. His movements were very handsome. That person sat on the Hummer and said to the cannoneer, I'll take our specially recruited soldiers first. As for the rest, some of them are not suitable to stay here. Don't talk so much to them. Just let them leave. A sharp blade does not nurture people who hold grudges. This last sentence was like a slap to Lin T's face. Yes, sir. The cannoneer respectfully stood up straight and saluted that person. Lin Te was still watching this scene. His eyes were wide open, and his pupils were filled with disbelief. However, Bai Juan did not even look at him again. He just sat in the passenger seat of the Hummer in a cool manner. His young side profile was like a blade. Then, the Hummer flew away, leaving only a thin layer of sand and dust behind. For a moment, the other 5 people, including the veterans who came to welcome the new recruits, had different feelings in their hearts. This was because they all knew that being able to get into that car meant that the other party had already become one of the top soldiers in the country. Lin Te. The cannoneer opened his mouth again. His voice was neither calm nor indifferent. Now you've seen it. He didn't rely on his family background, but on his strength to enter the sharp blade. I believe that you should also know that there are at most 3 people in the country who can be recruited into the Tricky Special Forces. He is one of them. Think about his strength before you speak. He doesn't want to make a move. If he wants to make a move, then you won't be able to defeat one of him. You always think that you're so powerful. All right, the commander has just spoken. You just wait here. In 3 minutes, a car will come to pick you up and bring you back to your original army. As he spoke, he walked over. Remember, don't talk so much in the future. Chapter 12:51. Lin Te was so regretful that his intestines turned green. He had only said it casually. Being sent back by the sharp blades before he even joined the army would become the biggest joke on him. The original army would not be happy to see him go back. After the other troops heard about this, they would not accept him either. However, it was already too late. It was precisely because Bai Juan had realized the importance of the sharp blades that he would not give people like Lin Te the slightest chance to stay. The sharp blades were the elites guarding the border of the motherland. If the people guarding this line of defense were not determined enough, then what about the people who lived inside? Uncle Tang had once said that the reason why he picked up a gun was because he did not want the girl he wanted to protect to see any war on our land one day. He was the same. The stronger he was, the more he could protect. He would not allow anyone on the national defense line to be like this. That was because his Jew lived there. It was 8 million kilometers away from him, so he would not allow it. The military Hummer sped through the no-man's land. The wind gradually grew stronger. To the east of Nepal, floating clouds floated past. The driver was very curious about Baijuan. He casually asked, "The chief of your army is actually willing to let you come." It had always been difficult for them to get people. Why was it so easy when it came to this guy? He was such a handsome group treasure, and his computer skills were especially good. It was said that his education was also very good. Shouldn't this kind of person be cherished in his own army? Baijuan listened to his words and thought for a while. The corners of his mouth curled up. I guess he is setting off firecrackers now. Huh. That person did not understand. He only felt that the youth's expression now had an indescribable sense of blackness. Baijuan continued, his voice slow. To celebrate my departure. However, he would soon regret it. There was a burst of crackling sounds. The special forces of a certain military region were really setting off firecrackers, as Baijuan had said. The chief, surnamed Zhao, even specially asked the adjutant beside him, "Are you sure that kid was not sent back by the sharp blades?" "Chief, you forgot about this." The other side took the initiative to ask for him. "They probably won't send him back to us." That's because they haven't understood that kid's character yet. The chief, surnamed Zhao, walked over and over again. "But even if they want to send him back, we won't take him back. It's not enough to be tricked once. I won't be tricked by him a second time. Go and tell them to set off the firecrackers again." Set off again? Release. That infuriating brat is finally gone. I'm so happy. It must be celebrated. The adjutant was speechless. This was the first time that the bureau chief couldn't do anything to the Special Forces soldiers. Speaking of which, Lorbai was considered to be one of the best. But thinking about it carefully, if Lorbai left, what would happen to those brats below? At the thought of this, the adjutant immediately reported to the old chief. "What are you stuttering for? If you have something to say, just say it." Leader Zhao's words were rather heroic. The chief had spoken. The adjutant closed his eyes and braced himself. "Chief, once Baijuan leaves, who will be able to hold the fort in the future? The few people on our side are either perverted or the third generation of the military. Other than Baijuan, who can treat them? Anyone else will be skinned alive and become a problem group. Do you think we should write a letter to Sharp Blade and ask them to release Baijuan as soon as possible?" When Leader Zhao heard this, he was so angry that his cheeks puffed up. "Are you saying that I can't control my subordinates who came from the compound?" "Yes." No, they are hard to control, hard to control." The adjutant wiped his sweat as he spoke. Leader Zhao was very proud. "If you don't write, I don't believe it. Without Baijuan, why can't I do it? Wait a minute, go out and take a look. Why is there no sound outside?" Before the adjutant could do anything, someone came from outside, reporting to the chief. "Speak." Leader Zhao took a sip of tea in satisfaction. The soldier hurriedly said, "They know that master by his left. Now, they are planning to feed all your favorite canned food to Favorite." Favorite was an Alaskan sled dog that Baijuan had brought with him ever since he joined the army. Now, because Baijuan was going to Sharp Blade, he could only leave it in the original army for the time being. It was said that a loyal dog followed its master, so this military dog was not to be trifled with. Leader Zhao was so angry that his head hurt. "Why are you telling me this kind of thing? Let their captain control them." But you also said that those people's backgrounds are not simple. What if something happens? Moreover, they did not violate the military order. All the indicators are qualified. They just bought all the canned food that you like to eat. The little soldier did not dare to speak loudly. He only buzzed like a mosquito, afraid that he would anger their chief. However, no matter how soft his voice was, Leader Zhao still heard it. This group of little brats were simply too immoral. "Adjutant, make the call." "Call where?" "Call Sharpblade. Tell them to quickly finish using Baijuan and let him come back." The adjutant coughed softly. You were just setting off firecrackers to celebrate his departure. I regret it now, okay. Leader Zhao really felt that he could not be the chief anymore. That kid, Bai Juan, had definitely expected such a scene. As Leader Zhao thought about the last time he met Bai Juan, he gritted his teeth. No wonder that kid looked at me with such a meaningful smile when I gloated and handed the transfer order to him. He even told me not to regret recommending him. At that time, I was still thinking that I might be so happy that he left. How could I regret it? This brat. Hang up the phone and call him back. However, the news given by the other side was that Sharpblade was not willing to let him go. Bai Juan did not plan to go back in a short period of time. Just like that, time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, the grass grew and the orioles flew. 3 years later, in early autumn, September, this was the month when all universities welcomed new students into the school. Whether it was the airport or the train station, especially the train station, one could see the signs of various universities welcoming new students at the entrance. The campus was bustling with noise and excitement. Every second and third-year senior was looking forward to having a beautiful junior for them to pursue. Therefore, most of the boys still liked to welcome new students. The entrance of the long-established university was as crowded as all the other universities. Some people were sent to school by their parents, while others sat from south to north for more than 10 hours just for the sake of this dream school. Most of the girls who were dragging their luggage were already sweating profusely when they reached the school gate. With their senior brothers and sisters coming to pick them up, they could heave a sigh of relief. However, there was one person in the middle who was not like this. Not only did she carry her own suitcase, but she also easily carried the suitcase of the girl next to her with one hand. Chapter 1252. The girl next to her was already dumbfounded. It was not because of anything else, but because the person who helped her carry the suitcase was even younger than her. The side of her face was fair and exquisite, and her eyelashes were so thick that they seemed to have been planted. They were as dark as crow feathers, casting a beautiful shadow under her eyes. Her hair was very long, like black satin. As she carried the suitcase, it slid over her trendy long jacket that ended at her knees and her fair and slender legs. She was so beautiful that it was indescribable. Her eyes were round. Even though she had grown up, she still gave people the feeling of a little tiger. Such a person had a white cat lying on her head, wagging her tail back and forth. She was simply like a character in a comic, beautiful and cute. Who else could it be but a Jew? She was now 16 years old and had long returned to her original surname, Bilegio. After she grew up, her figure was really good. Due to her excellent genes, although she was not old, she had already grown to 168 centimeters. Under her A4 waist were 2 slender and fair legs. Her legs were very good-looking. She stood straight on a pair of white canvas shoes, full of youth. Look, there's one there. What? A beauty. She looks so pure. You guys sit down. I'll send this girl upstairs. I'll go too. The 3 seniors leaned over one after another, their faces curled into a smile that they thought was handsome. One of them immediately said, "Junior, are you going to enter this dormitory building? Shall we send you upstairs?" "No, thank you." A Jew turned her head and smiled. Her face was even more beautiful, with red lips and white teeth. She looked like a natural person. The senior immediately said, "Don't be so polite. We'll all be schoolmates in the future. Look at you, a girl, you're so thin. There's no elevator in this dormitory building. It's tiring to carry so many suitcases up the stairs. We'll help you. This suitcase is not light. I'm afraid you won't be able to carry it," a Jew said with a serious face. When the 3 seniors heard this, they burst into laughter. One of them put his hand on the other person's shoulder. "Go, Old Yang. Show our little junior how strong you are." "No problem." Old Yang made an okay gesture. Old Yang is a sportsman. He can carry 2 or 3 boxes like yours without a problem. A Jew saw that it was difficult to refuse such kindness. She tilted her head and thought for a moment. She put the box on the ground and said, "If you can't carry it, tell me. I say, junior sister, why don't you trust your senior brother so much? Your senior brother is famous for his strength. Who in our university doesn't know that I Old Yang, am strong. Old Yang couldn't say the words infinite strength because all of his strength was channeled into his right hand that was holding the suitcase. He gritted his teeth tightly. Oh my God, why is this suitcase so heavy? Senior brother? It's fine, it's fine. I didn't perform well just now. After Old Yang finished speaking, he used all his strength to lift the box with both hands, but in less than 3 seconds, he put it back with a plop. At this moment, the surrounding people all looked in their direction. The other two senior brothers immediately leaned over and whispered, Old Yang, what's wrong with you? Why are you dropping the ball at such a crucial time? All the new juniors are watching. Don't embarrass us. No, damn it, this suitcase is so heavy. How heavy can a suitcase be? If you can't do it, just say it. Don't find excuses. Just now, the beautiful junior sister was carrying 2 big suitcases by herself. Don't just stand there and talk. If you don't believe me, you can try it. If you can carry that suitcase upstairs, I'll treat you to a small cafeteria for a week. As long as you can get the beautiful junior sister's WeChat number, it'll be fine. You guys carry it first. Hey, I don't believe that I can't even carry a suitcase. As that person spoke, the veins on his forehead tightened. When he saw the beautiful junior sister looking at him with a meaningful gaze, he smiled awkwardly. Then, junior sister, what's in this suitcase of yours? Some daily necessities? There was the black crystal given by her big brother, who said that it could be used as a small table lamp after dark. There was the dismantled gun parts given by her second brother, and a super notebook disguised as a small suitcase. There was also the gravity buckle that she usually used. This time, the gravity buckle was given to her by her mother. It was said that it was made of black ice iron. Its surface was silver, and it looked like a beautiful bracelet on her hand. However, each of them weighed no less than 20 kilograms. Her mother put 4 of them in a suitcase, 2 on her wrists and 2 on her ankles. After all, she had to undergo military training after school started. Once military training started, she had to walk in a straight line or train to fight. Wearing the gravity buckle would not hurt others too much. These things were all put into a suitcase by her. Obviously, those senior brothers did not know that the daily necessities in this person's mouth would be so different from others. They all looked at each other, and the 3 of them worked together to lift the suitcase. However, it was still trembling. The suitcase seemed to be able to be dragged on the ground at any time, and it could not be lifted up the stairs at all. It made their faces and necks red. The onlookers all stopped and burst into laughter. Aju did not want to make things difficult for them anymore. She walked over and said softly, Senior brothers, I'll take the suitcase. You guys go and help the other sisters. Don't help whoever is beautiful. Also, I won't tell you my WeChat. These words were like a violent blow to the 3 boys. Next, they watched as the extremely beautiful junior sister walked past them. She carried the 2 suitcases effortlessly and walked up the stairs as if she was flying. This was really a slap in the face. The 3 seniors looked at each other and hugged their heads and cried bitterly. Since when can't we even beat a weak girl? Therefore, on the first day of school, the campus forum of university posted a list of boyfriend strength. The one who won the first place was not a sophomore or a junior, nor was it a member of the basketball club. Instead, it was a newly enrolled beauty by Legio. He was really a boyfriend all day long. He helped many girls carry their luggage. Sometimes, he even looked cute and had 2 strands of hair on his head. Because she was the youngest and was a great skipper, most people immediately liked her when they saw her. Moreover, where was this place? University A, the capital. Many of the people who were admitted here came from number 1 high school. In other words, some of the senior sisters, who were Aju's fangirls at number 1 high school, immediately ran over to watch when they heard someone use the name by Legio to report. When they saw that it was the cute little Aju from back then, they wanted to pounce on her and kiss her. Chapter 1253. Back then, after Aju was picked up by her family, she went to England. Then, Vivian took her to many countries. There was no need to worry about her education. With Hellion Shinshun, the top student, Aju mastered all the high school knowledge in half a year of self-study. The place where the family went the most was India. A Jew liked to study the Buddhist Dharma, so Bailey Shanxie and the others often brought their sister there for a stroll. When the Indian monks saw their family, they began to chant scriptures without any regard for their lives. They were mainly chanting to His Highness. Unfortunately, no matter how powerful the eminent monks were, they would be suppressed and unable to move in front of His Highness. Those scriptures were all in vain. However, after following her two brothers and her father, a Jew also began to learn how to be two-faced. She mainly learned it from her father. However, her two-faced nature was still kind and would not be as extreme as Jew. In other words, a Jew had not appeared in the capital for more than 3 years. Now, she had finally returned. Every school was the same. The first day of school was only to report and get acquainted with the classroom. There would not be any classes. The tutor used the evening's self-study time to let the students finish their self-introductions. Then, he announced that the official military training would begin tomorrow. It would last 10 days. The local officers would come to University A for training. Students who were not feeling well would report the situation in advance. When the tutor said these things, it was inevitable that there would be people gossiping below. Hey, do you know? I heard that the officers invited by University A every year are especially handsome. It said that they are different from the recruits invited by other schools. Those who can come to University A for training are all sergeants and above. It's not like they're high-ranking people. They're just handsome. It's true. If you don't believe me, look at the batch of officers on our school's forum last year. At the very least, they're very tall. There's nothing crooked about them. Where? Let me see. Hey, isn't this? 2 or 3 girls gathered together. Not long after, last year's military training photos were dug up. Not to mention, those people all had noses and eyes. Even if they were not shockingly handsome, they were still considered tough. I wonder what the officers this year look like. Every girl had an innate sense of worship for soldiers. In their imagination, they always had an extra layer of brilliance compared to ordinary boys. It had to be said that because University A was the capital of the country, even the military officers were very good. But this time, there was a very big accident. It was night, and the moonlight shone in through the window, dyeing the shadows of the backlight with a layer of hairy edges. Only 2 people sat in the large military conference room. He was in his 50s, and the stars on his shoulders dazzled his eyes. However, he was the one who was standing, and his expression was very impatient. He walked over in front of the desk with his hands behind his back. The one sitting there was a young man in his early 20s. He had a bright smile on his face. It had to be said that under such circumstances, such a smile was full of black-bellied intentions. Logically speaking, at his age, he should still be in university. However, the young man was not like that. He wore many medals on his shoulders, which were only given to those who had truly made contributions. The young man's outline was very distinct, and the line from his forehead to his chin seemed to flash with a fuzzy light when the light shone on his handsome side profile. The lines and corners were well defined, as if they had been carved. It was so perfect that it was amazing. However, he did not feel anything. He leaned lazily on the back of the chair. If it were not for the handsome military uniform on his body, no one would be able to tell that he was a soldier. The atmosphere in the conference room was a little strange. The smile with the biggest star was a little bit of gnashing teeth. What did you say you were going to do? Military training for university students? Yes. That person smiled softly. Chief Zhao was really angry. You're going to take over my position, and you're going to go out and do military training for university students? You're the king of soldiers from Sharpblade, not those newbies. I won't allow you to go. Chief, I don't have a mission now. I'm on vacation. And aren't you afraid that if you don't allow me to go, your favorite canned food will be bought out? That person also stood up. He was very polite, but the words he said were very infuriating. Chief Zhao gritted his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. You, tell me, what do you want to do in university? I don't want to answer personal questions. That person still had a faint smile on his face. Chief Zhao wanted to use something to stab someone. The adjutant hiding in the corner rushed over and hugged the old chief's waist. Chief, don't be rash. I don't think Masterby meant that. Look, he's about to take over your position. There's no need to anger you again before you leave, right? Then what is he doing now? Chief Zhao turned around and roared. The adjutant tiptoed and began to whisper in his ear. Let him go. You can have a few days of peace. He did leave back then. He went to the Sharp Blade for 3 years. I was in pain for 3 years. Chief Zhao roared in a low voice. The adjutant reminded him. Think about this year's conference. When that person gave him the award, he mainly praised our army. He even said that our army is different from before. We are no longer a useless second-generation army. We can finally become the king of soldiers. Think about the battle achievements that he won for you. Also, last time, there was Commander Liang from the neighboring army. When he saw you, he was always arrogant and said that we were a problem army that couldn't produce results. It wasn't until last year that he shut his mouth. When he saw you, he took a detour. This is all because of Bai Zhuan. So, you have to be patient. Chief Zhao carefully recalled the attitude of his sworn enemy and comrade during the conference 2 days ago. He instantly felt that it was not a big deal to be angered by a certain brat. However, if he leaves, what if those bastards rebel again? Chief Zhao's voice was extremely low. After all, it was too embarrassing to say such a thing. Although the entire army was already well aware of it, the other troops still did not know. The adjutant smiled and said, I've already asked about this. I heard that Master Bai plans to take away the few who can cause the most trouble. All 5 of them are leaving? Chief Zhao confirmed again. The adjutant nodded. All of them are leaving. When Chief Zhao heard this, he turned his head and cleared his throat. He raised his attitude and said to Bai Zhuan, Which school do you want to go to? A university. After the young man finished speaking, his thin, pale lips curled up. Something different rose in his pitch-black eyes. This person's expression was very indifferent even when he was fighting in the jungle. At this moment, his eyes seemed to reflect the golden light of the setting sun, mixed with an indescribable color. Chapter 1254. Captain Zhao and the adjutant could not help but be stunned when they saw this situation. What's going on with this kid? Captain Zhao asked his subordinate. The adjutant shook his head. The main reason was that he was also dumbfounded. Master Bai had never been like this before. He had a feeling that something was going on. Captain Zhao pondered for a moment and said, University, it doesn't belong to us. Besides, our army has never gone to schools to give people military training. I'll give a call to the army branch. You guys are with them, but I don't know if you guys have gone there to train the university students or the army. Even their leaders have to salute you when they see you. You brat, you're really going back to your old age. Of all the things you can do, you have to go and give people military training. With your identity, forget it. You guys don't have any missions recently. I'm warning you. Take those bastards under you with you. Yes. Bai Zhuan gave a perfunctory military salute with a nonchalant expression. Captain Zhao wanted to stomp his feet again. However, Bai Zhuan did not even turn his head. He walked towards his dormitory with a smile on his face. Including Bai Zhuan, there were a total of 6 people living in the dormitory. It was not like the dormitory of a university student, which was very messy. In the military camp, every dormitory was clean and spotless, especially the quilt, which was a real square. It was like a piece of tofu, and it was a military green color. Because it was a marching quilt, the texture was very hard, so no matter what it looked like, it gave people a masculine feeling. The cups and tooth vats were placed very neatly, and everyone's black military boots stood upright under the light, just like the white poplar trees standing tall in the north of the desert. It was night now, and everyone was there. There were all kinds of sitting postures. Some had one leg up, some were holding guns, and some were sitting on the bed with their 2 long legs crossed. The bed was also divided into upper and lower bunks, but these people went to the upper bunk. Under normal circumstances, they would do a pull-up and a sweep of their long legs. They would sit on it with the wind, and their movements were very handsome. Hey, where's Master Bai? Where did he go? Didn't we agree to play poker? Where is he? The person who spoke was obviously a rough man from the northwest. After getting on the bed, he directly reached out and pulled his shirt. His figure was good, and his face was cool. Where else could he have gone? A person who had just finished showering looked up at the mirror and revealed a face that only Li Hailu would have. He must have gone to flirt with the chief again. Now, he was different from before. Compared to when he was in school, his facial features had become more chiseled, and there was a sharpness in his eyes. However, there was one thing that hadn't changed, and that was his innate hedonistic nature. Hailu, how many times have I told you? It was the chief who invited me to tea. I didn't flirt with him. Bai Juan's thin lips curled up slightly as he walked in. I'm still very afraid of old Zhao. After all, he is my superior. Everyone was speechless. Judging from how you address him as old Zhao, I really can't tell how afraid you are of him. All right, let's put aside the matter of playing poker for now. I have good news to tell you guys here. Bai Juan smiled like a spring breeze. His temperament was completely natural. It's about a vacation. Hearing this, everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. Master Bai, do you mean that we can go out on vacation this time? Someone jumped down from the top bunk. The smile on Bai Juan's lips became even wider. You can say that. Fuck, is it going to rain red all day? In such good weather with a gentle autumn breeze, my old man actually didn't trip me up and continued to let the army lock me up. This is not normal. Even if your old man doesn't care, my father is still worried that I will go out and harm the people. The main reason is that he is afraid that I will go to all kinds of nightclubs as soon as I come home. He even suspects that I am gay. You guys said that my father is not his biological son, but he is actually so suspicious. The person I like is clearly a girl, okay? I was just curious and went to a man's place. I am puzzled. Isn't he afraid that there will be more men in the army? You two scumbags get lost. Who's the scumbag? Have you forgotten the last time your mother came to the military camp to see you? She said that if you go home and race again, she will make sure that you won't be able to leave the military camp for the rest of your life. From the above conversation, it was enough to see how much of a scam this group of people were. No wonder Chief Zhao's head hurt when he mentioned these people. In the past, when Bai Juan didn't come, these people were just messing around on their own. It didn't affect the man, surnamed Zhao, to be his chief. In any case, he was just helping his superior look after this group of young masters. Moreover, this group of little brats only want to climb the wall at most. Ever since Bai Juan came, they had really twisted into a rope. They didn't want to climb the wall anymore. Like a real soldier, they were very good in all aspects. This small army had also become the most swift and decisive existence in the entire military region. They had completed many impossible missions, and almost everyone had battle wounds on their bodies. Sometimes, it made Chief Zhao quite proud. However, there was one thing. Their ability to harm others really made him gnash his teeth in anger. The main thing was that they had even harmed him. Wait a minute, do you want to go out together? Some people felt that things would not be so good. After all, their father always hoped that someone could control them. Bai Juan did not deny it. The few of them said again, it's not bad to go out together. We can also go to the seaside to barbecue. Bai Juan said very slowly, the place we are going is not the seaside. It's fine if we don't choose the seaside. One of them said, I prefer a more artistic place. Let's go to Jiangnan. Bai Juan walked over and sat down. That's not the south either. The north is fine too. It's just that. It's not bad to go to a modern city or something. I feel like I've become a cave person. This time, he seemed to have guessed correctly. Bai Juan curled his lips. It's indeed a big city. The big city in the north, the imperial capital. This was the first reaction of the 5 people. Fuck, this is the rhythm of wanting me to go home. Among the 6 people, other than Bai Juan, were from the imperial capital. The rest were from Wangjing and Junyang. They were all places with the most developed military. It's good to go home, but I'm afraid that I'll anger my father again. Someone said very seriously. It was obvious that this kind of thing was done a lot. Li Hailu also agreed with this sentence. My father will definitely chase me all over the courtyard. Bai Juan smiled lightly and shook his finger meaningfully. Don't worry, you won't have time to go home. What do you mean? Li Hailu, who was familiar with Bai Juan, gradually realized that something was wrong. Bai Juan put on the military cap in his hand and said with a faint smile, because the place we're going to is a school, not a military compound. We're going to be instructors for the students of University A for 10 days. We only have 12 days of vacation, so of course, we don't have time to go home. Chapter 1255. What? Instantly, the dormitory was filled with wails. Some people almost suspected that there was something wrong with their ears. Master Bai, are you saying that you want us to give military training to the university students? Use the hard-earned vacation time? That's right. Your understanding is correct. Bai Juan's voice was indifferent. That person did not feel that he had been praised at all. His handsome face collapsed, and he reached out to hug his head. Oh no, this is not true. Where's the promised barbecue at the seaside swimming pool? There's no such thing. I've decided. Another person said, Master Bai, it's good to stay in the military camp. At the very least, I can walk the dog and tease Chief Zhao. Chief Zhao was speechless. What did he mean by walking the dog and teasing Chief Zhao? Don't stop me. I'm going to beat these bastards to death. The other three also said very heroically, We're not going out. When Bai Juan heard this, he opened his eyes and glanced at this group of people. You know, I've always been very democratic. After hearing the word people, the group of people could not help but tremble. After all, the so-called democracy that Master Bai mentioned was that it was best to listen to whatever he said. These people thought that Bai Juan would use some kind of suppression method on them like before. All the hair on their bodies stood on end as they prepared to fight. Unexpectedly, Bai Juan just straightened the military cap on his head and smiled very handsomely. You can choose not to go, then I'll give this hard-earned opportunity to the other regiments. After all, there's so many beauties in university, there will always be people who are willing to go. Master Bai, the youngest one pounced over and grabbed Bai Juan's trousers. You heard wrong just now. We mean that we have to go. We absolutely have to go. Whoever doesn't let us go, we will bite them to death. Bai Juan turned around and raised his eyebrows. You mean we have to go? All of us? Of course. The five of them nodded together. Their attitudes were very positive. Bai Juan said concisely, I'll give you 5 minutes to pack up all your things. After 5 minutes, gathered downstairs. Yes. Swoosh. A neat and uniform salute. Apart from being handsome, that kind of action was more rigid and disciplined. This was completely different from their usual image. However, when they turned around, there was an uproar. Did you hear that? A university, a beauty? Nonsense. Hurry up and pack your things. Hey, look at what I'm wearing. Isn't my handsomeness very unique? Come on, not all camouflage uniforms look the same. It depends on the person. I look more handsome in it. Hearing the bustling sounds inside, Adjutant Li pressed his ear against the wooden door and happened to meet Bai Juan's eyes when he walked out. Ahem, ahem. Well, the car below is ready. Bai Juan's smile did not change. Thank you. But Adjutant Li, if you want to help Chief Zhao listen to something next time, you can come in and listen. That won't be necessary. Ha ha ha. Adjutant Li's smile froze. After all, it was disgraceful to be caught eavesdropping on the spot. It was truly too terrifying. He had never thought that Bai Juan would actually use such a method to deal with that problematic army. What do you mean by university? It has the most beautiful girls, so that's what those bastards are after. Adjutant Li said in a low voice. Bai Juan curled his lips. They're soldiers, and they are also ordinary people. It is normal for them to want to find a girl they love at this age. Adjutant Li was surprised that he would answer like this. He could not help but ask, What about you? Bai Juan paused for a moment. His indifferent eyes seemed to overflow with endless gentleness. Don't you know, Adjutant Li? I've said a long time ago, I already have someone I like. Only then did Adjutant Li remember that there was once a group of military doctors in the army. Most of them were female soldiers. They were specially assigned by the higher-ups to give psychological counseling to the soldiers. One of them had an outstanding appearance and a good background. She always looked for Bai Juan to chat. It was obvious that she was interested in Bai Juan, but before the girl could say anything during the singing performance that night, when everyone was teasing, Bai Juan opened his mouth. He still remembered that Bai Juan's expression was very serious at that time, as if this matter had touched his bottom line. His eyes were dark as he said, I have someone I like, and I don't like anyone to make such a joke. I also asked some people to keep a distance from me. His words did not leave any face for the young lady at all. His rejection was crisp and straightforward. However, I always thought that that was just an excuse you found at that time, Adjutant Lee said. After all, Bai Juan had just joined the army at that time. Not only was he the youngest, but he also had such a background. How could he join the army after having someone he liked? Bai Juan lowered his eyes and looked at the military truck outside. His voice was indifferent. She has never been an excuse for me to reject anyone. In other words, there really was such a person? Adjutant Lee was dumbfounded. When he wanted to ask something more, Bai Juan, who was dressed in a military uniform, had already walked away. Some people said that when you really liked a girl, you would put her photo in your wallet for 3 or 4 years. Bai Juan had never put a Jew's photo in his wallet. Instead, he put it in the lining of his military uniform, the place closest to his heart, because he had to protect his motherland and his girl well. It was because of this kind of psychokinesis that he was able to endure many things that ordinary people could not endure and become the person he was now. Bai Juan probably couldn't even count the injuries on his back. However, every single one of those wounds was for the sake of this piece of land. Late at night, they said that they would gather in 5 minutes. Not even a second would be missing. The 6 people got on the truck in a very cool manner. Li Hailu drove, and the other 4 stood upright in the back of the truck. Bai Juan sat in the passenger seat, and beside him was the silver-white Alaskan police dog. The scene was very cool. After the military truck drove away, leader Zhao really thanked the heavens. He could finally live a few days in peace with canned beef. The next day, the autumn wind was refreshing, and a morning light shone all over the school. The fragrant hot air came out from the canteen. Students running in the morning could be seen everywhere on the mottled green field. There were also freshmen carrying water bottles. A Jew was the earliest to wake up among them because she had always maintained the habit of morning exercise. She used all the weights and everything else. After all, only after morning exercise could she enjoy breakfast better. It could be said that the foodie Aju's obsession with eating had never changed. With a steamed bun in her mouth, Aju walked into the dormitory and listened to her roommates say, "Do you know? It's said that the instructors who will give us military training will arrive at the school at 10 o'clock. They will all come by military truck. The scene will definitely be very handsome. Do you want to go and see it?" Chapter 12:56. Of course we have to go and see it. We can't fall behind the other dormitories, right? One of her roommates had a very straightforward personality. She pulled a Jew, who was holding a steamed bun in her mouth, over and winked at her. The person beside her laughed. "Don't ask a Jew. A Jew definitely won't go and see it. Our little cutie likes to eat, right? Little cutie." That person really liked a Jew. As she spoke, she even rubbed a Jew's beautiful and cute little face. A Jew swallowed the steamed bun in her mouth and said seriously, "No, I want to go and see it too. Only good food and handsome men can't be let down. Everyone, we really didn't expect you to be like this." The power of a single dormitory could be imagined. However, the people in this dormitory did not expect that there would be so many onlookers. Their power was nothing in front of the vast masses of the people. This was enough to show that the instructors invited by university were indeed different from other schools. From afar, one could see military green pickup trucks driving over from afar. The tall officers in the back of the truck were all wearing military caps and camouflage clothes. They really became an eye-catching scenery. However, from where a Jew and the others were standing, they really could not see anything. Even if they stood on their tiptoes, they could only see the back of the black heads in front of them. There was also a series of deafening noises. There were indeed many fangirls who liked soldiers. I wonder which instructor is from our class. Look at that one, the one at the front. His legs are so long, and his back is so straight. Could it be that soldiers nowadays are recruited based on appearance? How is that possible? The army that this group of people came from is not ordinary. I heard that they're the best army in our country. Usually, you can't even see them even if you want to. Wow, so powerful. Of course, this is one of the benefits of university, eh? A Jew and the others did not even see anyone in the dormitory. There was a lot of discussion around them, and an endless stream of news came one after another. Looking over row after row, the girls cupped their faces. Originally, this scene was quite harmonious, but some boys were sandwiched in it and blushed together. What's wrong with this world? I can't see it at all. Her roommate next to her sighed in disappointment. Even when the military vehicle stopped, they still didn't walk to the front. There was a little white cat on Aju's head. In fact, it was easy for her to get there with her skills, but it was not good to cut in line, so she could only turn around and comfort her sisters in the same dormitory. Don't worry. Anyway, you will see it when we gather in the afternoon. I think you should go back to the dormitory to put on makeup and change your clothes first. If other people waste so much time here, they will definitely not have a good rest at noon. So, they'll forget to take a shower and put on facial masks and makeup. Hearing this, the three roommates immediately turned their heads. Aju's round almond-shaped eyes were stunned for a moment. She did not understand why her roommates looked so excited. One of them pulled Aju over. You're really smart. Big sister admires you very much. Don't tell anyone about this. Let's go back to the dorm now. That's right. Let's go back now. The other one chuckled. It's not easy to find a handsome instructor. We have the cutest little junior sister in the school. Quickly dress her up. When the time comes, let Aju act cute, and we'll have everything. Aju was speechless. The people from Aju's dormitory had just left. The soldiers on the military trucks all jumped down one by one. They jogged, their heels touching each other heavily. They stood in a standard military posture and saluted. That kind of cool and experienced was indeed something that ordinary men couldn't compare to. The person who welcomed them was a school leader. He happily stretched out his hand. Welcome. We sincerely welcome you to come to our University A for military guidance. The person standing at the front put down his hand from his military cap and smiled. Professor Liang, you're too polite. The chief has told us that you're old classmates. It's only right for us to come. Good. Professor Liang said the word good 3 times in a row and was about to lead the talented instructor inside. Then he heard another sound coming from behind. This sound was even louder than before. There were even girls who could not help but scream. It was not because of anything else, but because another military vehicle had appeared behind the 2 military vehicles. This time, it was not enough to describe the people on the military vehicle as capable and experienced. Other than the unique temperament of soldiers, each of them seemed to have their own characteristics. They wore pure black sunglasses, a 1-yard belt, and straight military boots. When they walked, they seemed to be able to bring up a gust of wind, especially the one walking at the front. He had a handsome nose, a perfect side profile, good-looking lips, long legs, and a narrow waist. His temperament was cold. His camouflage uniform made him look like a special forces soldier. His pair of dark and deep peach blossom eyes reflected the bright autumn sun. When he swept his gaze across the crowd, there was always a feeling of being electrocuted. Oh my God, is this really not a TV series? I'm going crazy. How can he be so handsome? If he was our instructor, I would be willing to stand in military posture for an entire day. I don't need to sleep today. The one standing behind him is also handsome. I feel like touching him. My God, my nose is going to bleed. Don't you think that they look about the same as us? They seem to be a little younger than the previous batch of instructors. They should be new recruits. I heard that new recruits are very young. They are about the same age as university students. Some are even younger than us. Who cares what kind of soldier he is? We must have this kind of instructor. When Professor Liang saw this scene, he raised his eyebrows in surprise. Captain Li, this is? After all, every year during military training, the military vehicles would arrive together. Everyone knew that the most important thing in the army was discipline. How could there be people who were late? What's more, there were 6 of them. Captain Li also frowned. Then he smiled and said, "They're from another unit. They were added at the last minute." I see. Professor Liang smiled. Then let the soldiers rest for a while and have lunch. After lunch, let the students gather on the field as usual. Okay, Captain Li was fine with it. However, Vice Captain Zhang, who was standing next to him, glanced at the new person who appeared with a face full of disapproval. Captain, where did this new recruit come from? How can he not know the rules? Captain Lee said in a low voice. The regiment commander said that they were far away, so they probably came late. It's not that they are far away, but that they haven't been trained by the army. Look at the way they walk. Do they really think that they are from the special forces? How funny. Chapter 12:57. Of course, the soldiers who were approaching heard this person's words. However, there was one thing. They had indeed come late, so they were in the wrong. Therefore, they did not say anything. Instead, they stood behind Bai Juan with strong eyes. With Master Bai around, they would not talk nonsense in public. This was the rule. As for Bai Juan, he only glanced at that person casually. Like a pine tree, he extended his hand to Captain Lee. Unit 211, here to report. He did not salute. Vice Captain Zhang was not convinced by this matter. He snorted coldly and said arrogantly, "Didn't the captain of your original unit tell you to salute when you see a superior who is higher than you?" Hearing this, the five of them rolled their eyes at him in their hearts. Salute? Superior? Master, by shaking hands with your captain, was already giving your captain a lot of face. Even your captain had to salute Master Bai when he saw him. Besides, even if they did not know Master Bai's original identity, the stars on his shoulder were the same as their captain's. This person was either blind or purely looking for trouble. The latter was most likely. It was obvious that this person did not like them. However, Bai Juan only curled his thin lips with a faint smile. Then, he turned around and pointed at his shoulder. His voice was very faint, with a unique magnetism. Didn't the captain of your original army tell you that you have to salute when you see a superior who is higher than you? The man surnamed Zhang had just said the same thing. However, he was choked by Bai Juan's words and could not refute anything. The person in front of him did it on purpose. He deliberately used his original words to stop him. You. Bai Juan swept a glance over him, as cold as ice. Why aren't you saluting? Captain Lee knew that his vice-captain was too impulsive, so he warned in a low voice, "Salute." Vice-Captain Zhang gritted his teeth. He had no choice but to reluctantly salute Bai Juan. When Bai Juan's people saw this, they immediately replied to Captain Lee in unison. They had always been polite. Bai Juan smiled and said to Captain Lee, "Captain Lee should have received the news as well. I hope that we can complete the mission in these 10 days. That's what we should do." Captain Lee was the kind of man who really did not care about trifles. He reached out and shook Bai Juan's hand. Vice Captain Zhang's anger continued to rise as he watched from the side. It was one thing for a group of recruits to be so unruly, but they also made him lose face in public. Although Professor Liang had already started walking in that direction, there were still many university students around. They were the most outstanding team in the army. How could they be humiliated by these random soldiers who came from nowhere? Sooner or later, he would get his revenge. Some people saw that Vice Captain Zhang was unhappy. They came over and said to him, "Vice Captain, this is nothing. Let's wait and see. When the military training starts, there will be a shooting competition. Those recruits definitely don't know anything. When the time comes, we will crush them with our strength. Let's see if they will be dumbfounded." When Vice Captain Zhang heard this, his eyes finally lit up. That's right, when the real military training begins, these wild soldiers will have a good time. Everyone was ready to go. They were going to follow Professor Liang into the cafeteria for lunch before facing the students again. Only Bai Juan's eyes were looking at the crowd intentionally or unintentionally along the way. The few soldiers following behind him all felt that their Master Bai was not normal today. If one were to say that he was looking at beauties, no, that was impossible. They had seen Master Bai never look at women when he was on a mission. It should be said that regardless of whether it was a woman or a man, in front of him, there was only the difference between a comrade and an enemy. Even if there were some missions that required them to participate in international balls, with many beauties gathered, Master Bai could still pass through thousands of flowers without being stained by a single leaf. He remembered that once, someone wanted to use a honey trap on Master Bai to get him to tell them his original army and real name. In the end, that woman was so infatuated with Master Bai that she was able to get everything out of him. Therefore, he was definitely not looking at a beauty. Then what was he looking at? It couldn't be that he was looking at a man, right? Stop! Don't think about this horrifying idea anymore. Don't you think it's strange? Master Bai personally brought us here to give military training to the university students. This is very strange in itself. Young Master Li, go and ask quick. Li Hailu thought to himself that even if they didn't say anything, he had to ask. In front of so many people, he had to pay attention to his superiors and subordinates. He couldn't directly shoulder them, so he simply leaned over and said in a low voice, "Hey, what were you looking for just now?" His eyes didn't leave him. "Looking for a Jew." Bai Zhuan's voice was still very indifferent, and it sounded like there was no change in his mood. However, it was these three words that made Li Hailu, who was full of arrogance, freeze on the spot. The rest of the people had never seen Li Hailu like this before. They asked curiously, "What's going on? What's wrong with young Master Li?" Li Hailu had always felt guilty about that incident back then. He always felt that if it wasn't for him, Guro wouldn't have pushed a Jew out so easily, and a Jew would have left the Bai family. Although Bai Zhuan had always said that this matter had nothing to do with him, Li Hailu still missed a Jew. After all, they had watched her grow up. He would always remember a Jew's appearance when she was young. She had a big bald head. When they played games, she would run up and down to get food for them to eat. The time when one was young was always missed the most. Sometimes, when Li Hailu thought about it, his throat would feel uncomfortable. This was also why he wanted to be smarter and really chose to join the army. In the past, when he saw girls, he didn't care about anything else. Now, he really felt that what a Jew said was right. The women at the foot of the mountain are tigers. Therefore, for so many years, Li Hailu had always given people the appearance of a hedonistic young master. Even if women really came, he had already learned how to distinguish their purpose of approaching him. However, what Bai Zhuan said still made his entire body tremble. He couldn't even speak clearly. "A Jew is here?" "Yes." Bai Zhuan smiled. He was handsome with bright eyes and white teeth, but there was a feeling in his voice that only the two of them could understand. "Hailu, you miss her too, right?" Bai Zhuan had just entered the army, and Li Hailu had followed him. For more than 3 years, they had not seen a Jew even once. But at the same time, Li Hailu knew better than anyone else. No matter how much he missed her, it was not as heavy as Bai Zhuan's. He still remembered the first year after he entered the army. The young man who he thought would never cry leaned against the wall in the middle of the night and whispered the word "a Jew." He thought, after so many years, why didn't he see how much Bai Zhuan liked a Jew? If he didn't love her too much, why would he miss her so much that he cried? Chapter 1258. If that was the case, it explained why Bai Zhuan came to University A for military training. So a Jew was here. After missing her, there was an indescribable excitement. Li Hailu did not care whether he was outside or not. He grabbed Bai Zhuan's arm and asked excitedly, "Is a Jew a new student who came to report this year? Which class is she in?" Such an action would naturally attract the attention of Vice Commander Zhang, who had always disliked them. After hearing the noise, Vice Commander Zhang looked behind him. The expression on his face was clearly saying that they were too noisy. Li Hailu did not have the time to care about that group of people. His hand was still holding Bai Zhuan, insisting on an answer. Bai Zhuan, on the other hand, curled his thin lips and seemed to be in a good mood. "I don't know yet, but I should be able to see her when we gather later." "Oh, right, when we gather, all the freshmen will be there." Li Hailu laughed out loud. "I wonder what a Jew looks like now." It had been more than 3 years. The little guy should have grown taller. Back then, what he cared about the most was her height. He really wanted to hug her. "Brother, when the time comes, I'll find her for you. I'll let them all find her for you." Bai Zhuan looked at him calmly and said, "You can find her, but you can forget about hugging her." Li Hailu was speechless. "Bai Zhuan, you're really jealous." Although the 4 people behind him did not know what had happened, they seriously felt that Bai Zhuan was very different today. The key was, who was he looking for? Weren't they here to give the beautiful university students military training? How did it become looking for someone? The problem army looked at each other in dismay. It was as if they could no longer figure out Bai Zhuan's routine. On the other side, in the noisy female dormitory, the 3 roommates were working together to dress up their cute little junior sister. How about drawing eyeliner? Aju has such beautiful eyes, so there's no need to draw eyeliner. If you draw it, you'll look demonic. Then how about sticking fake eyelashes? Do you still need to stick Aju's eyelashes? Aju, don't blink. If you blink again, I'll pluck out all your long eyelashes. Aju, who was threatened, sat down obediently. She held the little white cat in her hand and said very seriously, "You guys have been discussing for 15 minutes. Why don't I have a meal first and you guys can discuss it?" "No, we only have inspiration when we look at your face." Exactly. Her face was pleasing to the eye and smooth to the touch. Got it. What? Doesn't Nine have a pair of tiger ears? Let her wear it. Then he would draw a little heart on the left side of her face. He didn't need to do anything else, mainly because he didn't want to affect her natural beauty. Not all girls were suitable for drawing hearts on their faces. But for someone like Aju, once it was drawn, it would make her small face look even more youthful. Coupled with a pair of furry cat ears, it was simply perfect. All right, I'll use this face to confuse the instructors. Old Wu looked at his masterpiece with satisfaction. Another roommate directly handed the big steam bun in his hand to Cutie Chone. Aju, you don't have to do anything when the time comes. Just stand there obediently and look at others with your big round eyes. That's acting cute. Oh, Aju said as she brought the steamed bun over. She ate it with a pair of big eyes and a small face. The three of them could not resist her cute appearance. They all pounced on her, and each of them kissed her. Aju's body was distorted by the kiss, but she did not forget to say, "You have to leave this enthusiasm for handsome men. Even handsome men can't compare to our cute pets. Give me another kiss." Looking at the rice balls and snacks that the three of them bought for Aju, one could tell how much they liked Aju. One had to know that not every dormitory had such a cute pet. After the few of them finished dressing up, more than half of the time had passed. One had to know that no matter how beautiful they were, they could only be beautiful for one day. After the assembly, they would be issued a uniform, camouflage uniform. For 10 days, they were not allowed to wear skirts, shirts, or anything else. Moreover, they would wake up very early every day. Not to mention putting on makeup, they could not even sleep improperly. Therefore, the girls would cherish this last day and dress themselves up as beautifully as they could. After all, it was the nature of every girl to love beauty. It was because of this that they looked exceptionally cute. When the bell rang, groups of freshmen gathered on the field. There were freshmen from all classes. As far as the eye could see, the scene was really spectacular. A century-old famous school was not just for show. The scale was large to begin with. In addition to the school's appearance, it seemed that just by standing in the middle, one could feel the youthful flamboyance that belonged to their age. All right, students, quiet down. Professor Liang stood on the podium with a smile. Let's welcome all our instructors this time. As soon as Professor Liang finished speaking, the sound of uniformed footsteps could be heard on the field. It was the sound of military boots stepping on the ground when they took a proper step. In an instant, the boys clapped. Of course, at most, it was because the fangirls wanted to see handsome men. Everyone stood on their tiptoes and looked. Is the instructor who came last in the morning here? Yes. I saw him. He's right at the front of the line. So handsome. The more I look at him, the more handsome he becomes. We must get him to be our instructor later. We'll leave this matter to Zito. There's definitely no problem. The students were divided into groups according to their classes. Aju's class was in the far right corner. She also stood on her tiptoes to take a look. There was still an ear on her head, but she couldn't see anything. She lowered her head and looked at her stomach. It looked a little like a small animal wagging its tail. Aju had a roommate standing behind her. She said in a low voice, "Aju, remember what the sisters said. Whether we can keep the most handsome instructor or not depends on you." I think it's a little mysterious. Another person touched his chin. You forgot that there are a few beauties in our batch. The most competitive one is that Lu Zitong from the Performing Arts Department. Although she's not as beautiful as our Aju, and she's not as cute as our Aju, her department is standing in front of our department. In the end, it's still the archaeology department that's not popular. Everyone says that our people are the same as our department. They're all country bumpkins. If they're not tomboys, they're all ancient tombs. Aju raised her big eyes and said very seriously, "It's very fun in the ancient tomb." This child thinks she's been to the ancient tomb again. That person shook his head and patted Aju's head. "All right, be good. Stop fantasizing. Going to the ancient tomb is after graduation. Now, your main task is to act cute and keep the instructor. You have to be the most handsome one, understand?" Aju nodded and said, "This kind of thing depends on fate. When I went out today, I divined for our class." Chapter 12:59. Ever since they were in the same dormitory as Aju, the three of them realized that Aju seemed to be very talented in fortune-telling. At first, they did not believe it. After all, they were all materialists. How could they believe the words of some monsters? But Aju actually calculated what each of them had encountered in the past. This made the three girls instantly kneel down. Not only could the cute pets in their dormitory flirt, but they could also predict good or bad luck for people. Moreover, their accuracy was somewhat bizarre. Therefore, when they heard that Aju had done a divination before they went out, they immediately became excited. How was it a divination? At this point, Aju paused and smiled. It was very beautiful. "We will get what we want." The three of them looked at each other. "In other words, our instructor will be a handsome guy?" "Of course." "Oh yeah, but..." Aju touched her swollen belly again. "Our location is indeed not very good. We might encounter some twists and turns." The three of them were speechless. "Forget it. Anyway, the location is not good. Even if the instructor is not handsome, we still have you." Hearing this, Aju was a little stunned. The furry little tiger ears on her head stood up. When did she have the same function as a handsome guy? Because of the appearance of Bai Juan and the others, some of the students who were close to the platform had already secretly taken out their phones and started to take photos. Professor Liang did not directly object to their behavior. Instead, he said humorously, "When the instructors go down later, they will reserve time for everyone to take photos. However, students, you have to think carefully. Whoever takes out their phones will be confiscated by the form teacher. You're not allowed to play with your phones during military training. This is the most basic requirement. As for the other requirements, your instructors will tell you one by one. Now, please go down and take a look. Then, we will discuss how to allocate the classes." After hearing Professor Liang's words, some of the students wished that they could directly wave at Bai Juan and let him look here and there. Whether it was his face or figure, Bai Juan was perfect to the extreme. Even his good-looking thin lips were shining. It was no wonder that some of the girls were so excited that they grabbed the hand of another student. In the entire field, almost all the students were looking at him. However, in Bai Juan's eyes, it was as if those gazes did not exist. They did not affect him in the slightest. That handsome face was still so handsome and noble that it made people want to scream when they saw it. There was not the slightest ripple. He strode forward with his long legs, dressed in a military uniform. His dark and deep eyes swept over everyone in the class intentionally or unintentionally. "Look, what is he looking at? He seems to be looking at us?" "I don't think so. I saw it just now. It seemed like they were looking for someone." Lu Zitong, who was standing at the front of the team, was the most confident. She wore a red plaid skirt and a white t-shirt. Her long hair was tied into a bun, and her face was covered in natural Korean-style nude makeup. Her lip color was very successful, and her temperament and figure were particularly outstanding. When she saw Bai Juan pass by their class, her lips curled into a smile. But at this moment, Vice Captain Zhang and the team opened his mouth and looked at Bai Juan provocatively. "I'm in this class. Don't tell me that Captain Bai doesn't want to give it to me? Up to you." Bai Juan's tone was very indifferent, so indifferent that he did not have the time to pay attention to this person at all. Right now, the only thing in Bai Juan's mind was to find his girl. However, Vice Captain Zhang did not know anything. He thought that Bai Juan did not have the guts to compete with him at all. He stood in front of the acting class, won proudly. The students from the performing arts department were all going crazy. They didn't want this instructor at all. That intense gaze made it difficult for Vice Captain Zhang to ignore it. Every one of them, even the most beautiful female student, looked at Bai Juan's back and bit their lips reluctantly. This scene completely ignited Vice Captain Zhang's jealousy. He did not know where this wild soldier came from. Just because he was a little more handsome, he did not know how to restrain himself. How could such a person be compared to them? They were the soldiers that the students should worship. Just wait. Sooner or later, he would give this Bai guy a good lesson. It would also let the students know that the person they were looking at now was not a dog shit. There's hope. We have hope. The girls from the archaeology department clenched their hands tightly. The few people from a Jew's dormitory immediately placed a Jew at the front of the team. They had already decided that if they could really wait until the handsome guy passed through the other 4 major departments and came to their archaeology department, they would offer incense to a Jew every day in the future. It had to be said that there was really hope because from afar, they could see the handsome guy walking past one class after another. Although he would look carefully, he did not stop in front of any class. A Jew, it's almost time. There are only 3 classes left before it's our turn. A Jew calmly comforted them. Don't worry. If that person comes over, he will definitely choose us. Why? A Jew said seriously, because we're the last class. If he doesn't choose us, who else can he choose? Her roommates were speechless. They really could not refute this reason. When she said these words, a Jew did not raise her head. She had been looking at her bulging stomach. From just now, she had felt that something was wrong. She seemed to be, probably, on her period. The more she thought about it, the more it came to her. The good things did not work, but the bad things worked surprisingly well. A Jew frowned. Could it be that the twists and turns mentioned in the divination were that she had relatives visiting? Why did it have to be at this time? Did it come early? The soreness and discomfort in her lower abdomen had already turned into a faint pain. She felt that there was suddenly a warm current in her lower abdomen that was gurgling without any warning. What should she do? She was wearing white jeans today, so the strength just now must have been a little exposed. If she stood up like this, someone would definitely see her. Why don't you squat down? So many people were looking at the handsome guy, so no one would notice her if she squatted down. A Jew, who had been thinking about things with her head lowered, did not know that at that moment, the eyes of the handsome instructor, who had been discussed for a long time, lit up. It was as if thousands of fireworks were reflected in his eyes. He suddenly walked toward their last class without any warning. Everyone's eyes followed him as he moved. Only a Jew, who had a stomachache, reached out and hugged her lower abdomen. With a pair of furry tiger ears, she squatted in the middle of the team. There was cover in front and behind, so her action was not sudden. Instead, it was very cute. However, what a Jew did not expect was that as soon as she squatted down, a dark green military jacket covered her head. It did not pass her waist and hung down her thighs, just enough to cover her white jeans. Chapter 1260. A Jew froze without warning. The faint smell of tobacco on the military uniform mixed with the fresh ink fragrance of orange blossoms instantly filled her entire nasal cavity. From her point of view, she could only see a pair of pure black military boots. The shoes were shiny and spotless. It was as if they were as noble and unruly as their owner. Everyone around a Jew covered their mouths with their hands and could not help but gasp. A Jew did not need to raise her head to sense the gazes gathered on her side. What exactly happened? Who threw this military uniform at her? Was it the new instructor? She had already hidden herself so well, but she was still discovered? A Jew was about to stand up to confirm the situation when she found that someone had also squatted down like her. That pair of long legs that were originally straight were half bent on the ground. He seemed to be looking at her from the side. Then, the other party actually placed his hand on her head. A Jew paused and suddenly raised her eyes. That familiar yet unfamiliar face appeared in front of her without any warning. It was so close that it was just a breath away. The sunlight shone down from the top of his head and flowed in his eyes. It was like those childhood memories that had returned, bright and dazzling. He looked at her with a smile. There was a faint arc at the corners of his mouth. His pair of peach blossom eyes were black and white and beautiful, but his gaze was burning bright. Looking at him like this, a Jew suddenly remembered that when she was very young, the two of them were lying on the bed together. He was not very old when he was holding her in his arms and telling her a bedtime story. He had read a passage from a novel to her. That passage was written like this: "In this world, there will always be such a person who will appear when you need him the most. Whether you're surrounded by light or standing alone in a corner, he will definitely find you. Then, he will pass through the most turbulent crowd and come hug you." A Jew. He called her name. His voice was very low and gentle, as if there was quicksand slowly flowing through his ears. It was very similar to what he often heard when he was young, but compared to that time, it was even more magnetic. He was still smiling, but a Jew was in a daze. With a pair of little tiger ears, she could not help but reach out to touch Bai Juan's face. The touch from her fingertips was very soft. Was he really her little brother? A Jew blinked her round cat eyes. There was a pink heart painted on the side of her face. It was so beautiful that it was a little bubbly. Bai Juan looked at his beautiful child, who was stunned. Without thinking, he bent down and directly carried her up horizontally. He used his military uniform to cleverly cover a Jew's face. His action immediately caused an uproar in the field. Everyone was looking in his direction. The girls wished they could transform into the person he was carrying. However, other than a few people in a Jew's dormitory, no one knew who he was hugging. Because the green military uniform draped over her body happened to cover a Jew's face, only revealing the two small tiger ears on her head. Li Hailu stood far away, but when he saw Bai Juan's action, his eyes lit up in a minute. However, the others didn't know what was going on. All of them were in a state of crash. What's the situation? What's the matter with the instructor? Voices rose and fell one after another on the sports field, all of which are the voices of the students discussing. The adjutant, surnamed Zhang, also looked in Bai Juan's direction, as if he was about to open his mouth to stir up trouble. However, before he could open his mouth, Bai Juan straightened his two overly slender legs. His pitch-black eyes looked at the podium. His voice was very calm, and there was not a trace of fluctuation in it. "Professor Liang, this student is not feeling well. I'll send her to the infirmary first." Professor Liang was obviously a little unable to react. He thought that this person's eyesight was really good. There were so many students, but he could not even see a person's face clearly. The other party could even see that someone was not feeling well. He was really amazing. Bai Juan did not seem to have thought of hearing Professor Liang's agreement. After saying that, he walked through the square formation formed by the students. His side profile was still incomparably handsome. He just hugged a Jew as if there was no one else around. Aura was really a very selective thing. Even if he left just like that, Professor Liang did not say anything. Instead, the entire scene felt shocked. His straight military uniform depicted his tall and straight back. Gradually, until he could no longer be seen, no one on the sports field dared to speak. A Jew's roommates were basically in a state of wandering souls. They only wanted that handsome man to be their instructor, but they did not want a Jew to use the trick of self-injury. However, a Jew's trick of self-injury was really worth it. Not only did she complete the mission perfectly, but she also got such a princess carry. The scene just now could not be more awesome. However, the soldiers did not think so. They could not wait to immediately follow him and see who was in Bai Juan's arms. What a joke. When had Master Bai ever treated a girl like this? Those beautiful military doctors bit their lips and fell in front of him. He would not even help them and directly hand them over to his assistant. Even if there were really students who were not feeling well, Master Bai would have already instructed them. How could he personally touch them? They had always suspected that Master Bai either liked men or was allergic to women. But today, he actually knew how to hug someone. They had to see who exactly made Master Bai, this evildoer, fall in love with someone. Seeing through the thoughts of these four people, Li Hailu directly blocked in front of them. "Go and choose the class first. Don't choose the one that Bai Juan chose. If you don't take the other classes, they will all be taken by others. Compared to these things, Master Bai is more important." Bah! What I mean is that Master Bai's relationship is more important. Of course, Li Hailu could not let them go over. Right now, Bai Juan probably wanted to be alone with the Jew the most. Otherwise, he would not have thought of such an excuse. This student was not feeling well and needed to go to the infirmary. He clearly felt that the people around him were in the way. "I advise you not to go over," Li Hailu said very cautiously. Of course, the soldiers would not be so obedient. "Young Master Li, aren't you curious about who has such great charm for our master by to hug?" Li Hailu shook his head. "I'm not curious because I know who it is." "Who is it?" The four of them widened their eyes. Li Hailu was very carefree. "Do you still remember that Bai Juan said a long time ago that he had someone he liked? That was completely an excuse used by Master Bai to block the peach blossom, okay?" Someone obviously did not believe it. Li Hailu was not in a hurry. "Since you don't believe this, then you should know that there is a photo in the lining of Bai Juan's military uniform, right?" Chapter 1261. Of course I know. Master Bai treasures that thing more than he treasures himself. They could not understand how a photo could be treated as a treasure. Li Hailu announced the answer. "The girl he's hugging now is the girl in the photo." "Young Master Li, don't talk nonsense. Master Bai's photo is clearly of a young monk. We even risked our lives to look at it for a while. After Master Bai found out, the canteen didn't give us meat for half a month." "That's right." Li Hailu silently raised his head. "I once thought that she was a young monk, but reality proved that she was a girl. You should know her company." "Which company?" "Zhu Wei Group." The four soldiers were shocked. "That famous little princess?" Li Hailu smiled. "Yes, Bai Juan was once her guardian. The two of them lived together for 8 years. At that time, Bai Juan fell in love with her. Even after entering the army, he couldn't help but inquire about her every year. However, he didn't go to see her because he felt that it wasn't time yet. Now that the time has come, are you sure you want to disturb him at this time? You should understand Master Bai's character." The four soldiers were speechless. They really understood. Master Bai was definitely the kind of person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. They had originally planned to barge in no matter what young Master Li said. Now, they should obediently stay and choose the military training class. One had to know that compared to curiosity, if they ruined Master Bai's long-awaited reunion, Master Bai would definitely make them eat vegetarian for half a year and cut off all their entertainment activities. Master Bai's relationship with their parents was very good. If they joined forces to suppress them, they would definitely have no way out. Therefore, they would not go and look. They would stay. Li Hailu was very satisfied with the result of his words. It was also because Bai Juan was usually shameless enough. The selection on the field was still continuing. Some people were jealous that someone could be treated like that by Bai Juan. They snorted coldly in dissatisfaction. The people from the acting department also said, "He's really better at acting than us. He can feel uncomfortable at any time, but he has to feel uncomfortable at this time. He really thinks that he's Sister Lin. But why is our instructor so ordinary? Although he's not bad-looking, he's far worse than the one just now. Don't say any more. He'll hear you later." In fact, Adjutant Zhang had already heard it. The more the students discussed, the darker the light in his eyes became. He looked at the back of the figure that disappeared at the end of the field, and once again, he made up his mind to teach the other party a lesson. The people on this side were different. On the other side, a Jew was being hugged by Bai Juan the entire time. She felt that it was a little unreal. During the 3 years that she had been overseas, she had written many letters to her little brother. Every time he sent it out, there was no reply. She even went to the Bai family to take a look. Even Grandpa, Bai had followed the army to the southwest border. There was no one at home. The people in the compound said that the little brother had joined the army, but no one knew which unit he had joined. At that time, a Jew was still young. She held a large pile of gifts that she had collected from abroad in her arms. She stood at the entrance of the Bai family's house and cried. She finally understood what her little brother had always said in the past. "On my birthday, I don't want anything. I just want you to be there." But it was too late. There were also people who said that not replying to letters meant that they did not want to contact that person. After all, she had asked her brothers to find out where her little brother was. There was still no reply to the letters she sent out now. Her little brother was right in front of her, so close. A Jew stretched out her hand again and grabbed Bai Juan's sleeve. Bai Juan lowered his head and looked at the person in his arms. A lock of black hair fell in front of his eyes disobediently with his movements, setting off his dark and deep eyes, causing his unruly temperament to gradually reveal itself. However, his voice was low and gentle. "We'll be there soon. Bear with it a little longer." After turning the corner, they arrived at the school's infirmary. When the doctor in the infirmary saw that it was the officer who carried the girl in, he thought that something had happened. He immediately walked over and asked, "What's wrong? Were you feeling unwell? Is it a heat stroke?" A Jew was about to speak. She was interrupted by Juin's indifferent voice. "It's not a heat stroke. Her relatives are here. Her stomach hurts." The doctor in the infirmary was also shocked by Juin's calm attitude. Wait a minute, she was asking about the girl, right? How could this officer know the symptoms better than the patients themselves? Not to mention this kind of illness, a Jew herself was also a little embarrassed. After all, she was not a child anymore. She blushed a little from Juin's answer and buried her head even deeper. When Juin saw her actions, the corners of his mouth curled up. That smile was very beautiful and bright. Seeing this, the school doctor coughed lightly twice. "If it's a relative, I don't recommend taking medicine if the pain isn't too bad. It's not good for the stomach. I have brown sugar here. Let her drink some. There's a place to rest inside. You can put her on the bed first and let her rest for a while. She should feel much better." After hearing this, Juin thanked her and walked into the inner room. He placed the Jew on a pure white bed. Although there was no door between every bed and every bed in the infirmary, they were separated by layers of white cloth hanging on the walls. The school doctor brought in the bag of ginger and brown sugar that she often drank and was about to send Juin away. Master Bai opened his mouth again with a noble smile. "Thank you for the brown sugar, doctor. I'm here. You can go and rest." The school doctor choked. She suddenly felt that her lines had been stolen by the other party. However, she could not say anything else. After all, he was the other party's instructor. During military training, the instructor was equivalent to the head teacher of each class. It was only right for him to care about the students. Comforting herself like this, the school doctor did not feel that there was something wrong with her IQ. A Jew was lying on the bed obediently. A pair of round dragon eyes were wandering around. Juin had already taken out a piece of chocolate from his military uniform. Then he tore open the packaging and handed it to her lips. A Jew did not stand on ceremony and took a bite. Juin's habit of bringing chocolate was something that a Jew had when she first had her period that year. Sometimes, a Jew's stomach would hurt and she could not eat anything. She only wanted to eat chocolate. This seemed to be a common problem in the Bailey family. Ever since then, Master Bai, who had never eaten sweets, would always carry a piece of chocolate with him. Other than himself, no one knew who he had prepared it for. It seems to have melted a little. Juin looked at the spot where her little face was stained with the chocolate. His lips curled into a smile, and he was indescribably doting. A Jew's fingers were still tugging at his sleeve, as if she was afraid that he would suddenly disappear. "It's still very delicious, even if it melts." "Is that so?" Juin laughed softly. "Then I'll try it too." As he said that, he suddenly leaned over. Chapter 1262. His slightly cold, thin lips imprinted on the corner of a Jew's mouth without any warning. A Jew, who was originally silly and cute, now even her head froze. Seeing her like this, Juin did not stop. Instead, he reached out and pressed the back of her head. He opened his mouth and held her lips, kissing her very gently. The sunlight fell on Juin's body through the white cloth that was blown away by the breeze, coating him with a faint halo. The feeling of their lips touching was very soft, and there was a faint but pleasant smell. A Jew felt as if she had been fed a piece of mint candy. It was cold. She should have been awake, but for some reason, her heart would contract slightly with the other party's movements. Juin did not deepen the kiss. Firstly, the location was not right. Secondly, he was afraid that he would scare away his Jew as soon as they met. That would not be worth the loss. Therefore, he only touched it gently. The tip of his tongue licked a Jew's lips as if to comfort her. It was like a feather gently sliding past, making one's heart itch. "It's really delicious." Juin pulled away from the two of them. His eyes flashed with gentleness, and the corners of his mouth could not help but reveal a smile. It was as if he was really evaluating the chocolate. Aju was in a daze. Her eyes were still looking at Bai Juan's smiling face. He stood up and said, "I'll go make you a cup of brown sugar water. Wait here obediently." Looking at that back, Aju subconsciously licked the place where Bai Juan had kissed her. She did not know how to answer, so she could only vaguely say yes, when she realized that she should ask the little brother why he was asking her. Bai Juan had already handed the cup filled with brown sugar water to her lips. "I just tried it. It's not hot." Some things have become a habit since she was young. For example, the things that Bai Juan fed Aju would reflexively eat them. As she drank the brown sugar water in Bai Juan's hand with her round tiger eyes, she thought about why she always felt that the matter of kissing was deliberately turned over by the little brother, just like that. However, Aju did not dwell on this question for long. After all, when there was only the bottom of the brown sugar water left, she needed to hold Bai Juan's hand with both hands and exert force. Bai Juan had liked to watch Aju do this since she was young. She was like a cat drinking water, and her fingertips were still on the cup. However, what he liked the most was that her hand would be placed on the back of his hand, and her body would also lean towards him. His Aju had not changed at all. Bai Juan smiled again. Aju was still drinking the brown sugar water. When she saw him smile, her round eyes turned over. Bai Juan took the cup away and took 2 tissues to wipe the corner of her mouth. "Don't drink at the end. Do you want to sleep?" Hearing Bai Juan say that he did not need to drink the bottom, Aju felt that the strength she used to hold the little brother's hand so tightly just now was a little wasted. She looked at the cup regretfully and shook her head. "I'm not sleeping. If I sleep in the afternoon, I won't be able to sleep at night." "Is that so?" Bai Juan raised his eyebrows with a faint smile. Then he placed his palm on the bed and lay on his side. He looked at Aju and kept one hand free to touch Aju's head as if he was coaxing a child. He said in a low voice, "Then rest with me for a while. I'm a little tired." If these words were heard by those problematic soldiers, they would definitely ridicule Bai Juan collectively. A person who had been sleeping since yesterday and only woke up today when he arrived at school had no right to say that he was tired. Moreover, with Lord Bai's physical strength, he could still stand up and shoot remotely and fight in the jungle without sleeping for 3 days and 3 nights. How could a military king be tired so easily? It was clearly an excuse to flirt with a girl. Unfortunately, the person he was flirting with was none other than Aju. Even though it could be seen that Bai Juan was not sleepy at all, Aju still nodded when she heard him say that he was tired. She was even worried that Bai Juan would get cold, so she gave him half of the blanket. "Thank you." Bai Juan smiled. He looked very handsome when he looked at people from the side, especially when he was lying beside him with such long legs. Aju stared at him for a while. Then, she stretched out her finger and poked Bai Juan's face. In a soft voice, she said, "Little brother." Hearing this name, Bai Juan finally felt that his Aju had really returned. He stretched out his hand and pulled her over. His chin rubbed against Aju's furry head, and the corners of his eyes smiled. "It feels different." Aju poked his chest again. Bai Juan couldn't help but laugh. "How is it different?" "It's much taller." Aju was a little depressed when she said this. She had already worked very hard to grow, but she didn't expect that little brother was even more hard-working than her in this aspect. Bai Juan tilted his head and kissed the tip of her hair again. "I ate a lot during training in the army, so I grew fast." "Yes." Aju responded and wanted to poke him again. Bai Juan's eyes darkened. He suddenly grabbed her wrist and brought her hand to a safe position. Aju looked at him in confusion. Bai Juan could only sigh in his heart, but he still smiled. "Does your stomach still hurt?" Aju shook her head. But even so, Bai Juan's palms still covered her small stomach. In the past, Aju felt that little brother's hand was different from hers. It was dry and warm. He clearly had a cold appearance. "Where have you been these past few years?" Although he had always vaguely known, Bai Juan still wanted to hear his girl tell him personally. When he saw Aju again, he did not know how to describe his feelings. Just as Li Hailu had said, Aju had indeed grown up. Not to mention her appearance. Even her height was completely different from before. No one knew how he felt when he saw that young girl with a pair of tiger ears in the middle of the vast crowd, including now, looking at this person at such a close distance. He would faintly feel a little unwilling. In a place that he could not see, his girl had a new change. And in these 3 years, he was not involved. Even though he understood that there were some things that he could not do anything about, Bai Xuan still brooded about what she had done when he was not around. Sometimes, a Jew would be a little talkative in front of Bai Xuan. Like a little hamster, she would tell him where she had been and what she had done. Bai Xuan listened with a smile. He reached out and tucked her long hair behind his ear. His eyes fell on the pink heart that he had discovered long ago. "What is this? My roommate made it for me. She asked me to act cute and make the handsome instructor stay." A Jew puffed up her cheeks and reached out to poke her left face. She wanted to rub away the heart that she had drawn earlier. However, Bai Xuan stopped her. "It's very cute. It's indeed suitable for acting cute." However, did this also mean that if he did not come to military training for University A this time, would a Jew act cute to others? Chapter 1263. Her instructor would also become someone from the army who came for military training. When he thought of this possibility, no matter how beautiful Bai Xuan's smile was, his eyes were cold. He, who did not take the army who provoked them seriously, had the urge to torture them at this moment. A Jew blinked her eyes in confusion. Why did she feel that her little brother seemed to be a little angry all of a sudden? Bai Xuan was indeed angry, but his mood did not change that much. Moreover, he really liked that a Jew had such a thing drawn on her face. It looked like a gift that had been sent to him, making his originally exquisite little face a little brighter. Perhaps he should change his words. When such a bonus peach heart was stuck to his face, it always made people want to kiss it. Bai Xuan did not deliberately endure it. He approached her bit by bit and naturally placed his lips on the peach heart on her left face. This kiss was not like the last one. He kissed her with his eyes closed. A Jew could even feel her little brother's thick eyelashes sweeping across her face with his movements. It was soft, numb, and itchy. When his lips landed on the heart of the peach blossom, it was as if she had been electrocuted. A Jew only felt her heart tremble. It was a very strange feeling. She was a little out of breath. She could only open her round black eyes in confusion. Bai Xuan lowered his head to look at her and smiled gently. "A Jew, wipe the peach heart off when you go out later. Wipe it off." A Jew touched the place where she had been kissed just now. "Didn't you say that it was very cute?" "Yes, it was cute." Bai Xuan curled his lower lip. He did not say the rest of his words. It was so cute. Of course, he could not let others see it. A Jew did not move. In the end, Bai Xuan personally reached out his hand and used his fingertips to wipe the peach heart on her face bit by bit. A Jew was obedient, but she was getting more and more confused about why her little brother did these things. Bai Xuan raised his hand and looked at the time. He really wanted to lie down like this with a Jew forever. However, this was not a good place after all. After a long time, the school doctor would also come in. Moreover, the students would be dismissed in a while. At that time, there would probably be a lot of people in the infirmary. "Does it still hurt?" Bai Xuan asked a Jew in a low voice. "If it doesn't hurt, we'll go back." A Jew was no longer in pain. After hearing Bai Xuan's words, she rolled over and stood up. Her speed was so fast that Bai Xuan regretted asking that question. He should have waited a little longer before going out. A Jew did not notice her little brother's regret. After tidying herself up, she stood by the bed and watched Bai Xuan lower his head to tidy up the collar and cuffs that had just been crumpled. Bai Xuan felt that it was not bad to be waited for like this. When he saw a Jew standing there, he naturally stretched out his hand. Without thinking, a Jew pulled him up from the bed with all her might. In the past, when they were in school, Bai Xuan was always woken up by a Jew like this. Xiao Lin and the others would always laugh at him when they saw it. However, in the 3 years that he had been away, he had been gone for a long time. But no one stood by his bed and waited for him, not to mention pulling him out of the darkness like this. Bai Xuan smiled lightly and swallowed the thing that surged out of his throat. Emotions were emotions, but rationality still had to be preserved. Therefore, before Bai Xuan left, he did not forget to remind a Jew, A Jew. Remember, there is no good person in the army, so don't get too close to them, understand? A Jew heard this and thought for a moment before saying, Little brother, you are also a soldier yourself. Bai Juan was speechless. He did not expect that there would be a day when Master Bai would set him up. However, Bai Juan only paused for a moment and quickly returned to his usual calmness. Except for me. A Jew smiled. There was a hint of black-bellied in it. Bai Juan also curled his lips. Is it very satisfying to laugh at little brother? No. A Jew seemed to have thought of something when she said this. Then the instructor of our class, of course it's me. Bai Juan's voice interrupted a Jew's words very indifferently. How could he let someone other than himself be his girl's instructor? A Jew smiled again. Little brother, the person they asked me to act cute and fight for is you. You saw me a long time ago. Bai Juan raised his eyebrows. It shouldn't be possible. They were so far away. A Jew shook her head honestly. I can't see you. There are too many people in front of me. However, my roommates said that they want to fight for handsome men. I don't think any of those instructors can be more handsome than little brother. When Bai Juan heard this, even his footsteps stopped. Then he turned around, bent down, and lowered his voice beside her ear. A Jew, I'm sorry. A Jew only felt the warm breath hitting the tip of her ear again and again. It was so hot that it was unbelievable. The magnetic low voice sounded again. It was very pleasant to hear. Don't always say things that make me want to kiss you. A Jew was stunned. Looking at that tall and straight back, she muttered in a low voice, Little brother really can't stand praise. I said that he is handsome, but he still wants to kiss me. However, she decided that she would praise little brother more in the future. Anyway, she liked little brother to kiss her very much. This way, there would be no sense of estrangement. Thinking of this, a Jew raised her head and gave Bai Juan a big sweet smile. After all, Bai Juan did not have eyes on his back, so he could not see this scene. He only felt that his girl was getting more and more uncontrollable as she grew. Yes, this was not a good sign. At least not now. Bai Juan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he appeared in front of everyone again, he had already changed back to the cold and noble Colonel Bai. The problem soldiers pretended to train their students without blinking. In fact, their eyes were constantly looking in Bai Juan's direction. No, it should be said that they were looking in a Jew's direction. After all, Master Bai's love interest was much more important than Master Bai himself. However, they really could not tell that this was the little monk in the photo. Although their eyes looked the same and their facial features were also equally exquisite. But who would have thought that the monk would grow such long hair and wear a pair of tiger ears on his head? They were really caught off guard. It turned out that Master Bai liked this type. To think that those military doctor beauties still wanted to be hotter. They had not understood Master Bai's taste at all. As if sensing their gazes, a Jew raised her head and looked in their direction with a pair of majestic tiger eyes. The problem soldiers' backs trembled. Why did they feel that that was not the gaze of a cute girl at all? Why was there a hint of wanting to duel with someone in there? They must have seen wrongly. Chapter 1264. Bai Juan also looked in their direction. With just a casual glance, the problem soldiers immediately retracted their gazes obediently and began to correct the students' proper steps with a serious expression. It was completely impossible to tell that they were peeping just now. Destroying evidence was so fast. On the other hand, Vice Commander Zhang, who was closer to Bai Juan and the others, was immediately stunned when he saw a Jew's appearance. Then he sneered again. No wonder this Bai Juan did not choose any other department, but chose the most unpopular archaeology department. So this was what was going on. With this thought in mind, his tone became a little strange. We have been training for more than an hour before Captain Bai came back. The students are all good students. Captain Bai, don't delay the progress of the class. When the time comes, we won't be able to score. Bai Juan raised his eyelids and did not say anything. The corners of his mouth curled up, but there was not the slightest bit of warmth. It was this attitude that made Vice Commander Zhang even angrier. It was as if he did not exist in the other party's eyes at all. He was just a wild soldier. What was there to be arrogant about? The students of the archaeology department also heard Vice Commander Zhang's words. They thought to themselves that the more this instructor looked down on them, the more outstanding they would be. With such a handsome and caring instructor in their class, what was the point of military training? Aju also sensed that person's hostility towards Bai Juan. Her round tiger eyes darkened. There was obviously something wrong with the way this person looked at her little brother. She wondered if she would be expelled from the school, if she hit an instructor in school. Seeing that she did not move, Bai Juan knew what she was thinking. He suddenly smiled. Aju, here. Aju still understood the rules of the military in front of her classmates. After all, with her mother's relationship, she knew a lot of common sense in the military. Bai Juan smiled again and said, "Return to the team." Yes. Aju trotted back to the class team. As soon as she stood still, her roommates began to praise her. Aju, your trick of self-injury was worth it. Aju was confused. What trick of self-injury? Her roommates did not say anything. They had an expression that said, "Don't hide it anymore. We all understand. Tonight, we will treat you to a big meal to reward you." Aju still had no resistance to a big meal. She nodded her head cutely. However, some of the more insightful roommates noticed something. Aju, why are your lips red? Such a question made Aju immediately recall the scene when Bai Juan lowered his eyes and kissed her. His heart seemed to have skipped a beat. It was clearly a very normal greeting in the past. Could it be that she felt different because she had grown up? It was sweet and bitter at the same time, as if something was pounding on his chest. It was not easy for her to stabilize a little. Then someone asked, Aju, why is the heart on your face gone? Aju paused. Her face felt as if it was on fire. Did you rode off somewhere? That person sighed regretfully at first, then laughed. Forget it. We've achieved our goal anyway. Quick, tell us, how does it feel to be hugged by a handsome guy? You don't know, but when the instructor bent down to hug you just now, the entire field exploded. The people from the performing arts department were like fools looking at us. They probably thought that the instructor would definitely choose them this time, but they didn't expect that they would still stay in our archaeology department in the end. Aju, you are a great contributor to our department. You have helped our department hold our heads high. There was a reason why the students said that. In University A, the performing arts department had always looked down on the girls from the other departments, especially the archaeology department. In their eyes, none of the girls from the archaeology department were presentable. However, for some reason this year, there was a student who skipped a grade, Bailey Gio. As a new student, Lu Zitong, who had always been praised by others, did not like to be robbed of her limelight like this. The performing arts department had always been different from the other departments. Only when one was famous enough in the school could they become the focus of the media. Lu Zitong's family background was not bad, and her piano playing was also very good. She had already been signed by a management company before she entered the school, so she was also very popular in the school. Originally, she should have been the one to shine, but now that her popularity was overshadowed by others, of course she would feel uncomfortable in her heart. Moreover, that instructor. Lu Zitong glanced in Bai Juan's direction and bit her lip heavily. She was clearly the one who had taken a fancy to him first. On the first day of military training, the two departments already had a faint feeling of enmity. Under normal circumstances, the training would not be too strict at the beginning. Usually, they would first plan their walking and standing postures and let the students familiarize themselves with the slogans. Therefore, for the entire afternoon, the entire field was filled with people shouting, "Turn left," march in unison, 121,121. Compared to the other instructors, Bai Juan's voice was not loud. On the contrary, it always gave people a cold and indifferent feeling. However, it was this kind of attitude that seemed to be more convincing to the crowd. There were two girls in the archaeology department who had uncoordinated limbs and were always in the same place. Bai Juan did not let them stand out alone to practice like the other instructors. It had to be said that the fact that Aju had once been ostracized had a great impact on Bai Juan. Therefore, after Bai Juan became an adult, he understood how easy it was for girls at this age to be hurt in their hearts. He still let them stay in the team and walked to the side of the two people. He straightened his slender legs and walked with them. With such a standard, the students walked even more orderly. Especially the two female students, who had been led back and forth by Baizhuan 8 or 9 times, were no longer easy to follow. One of them was a Jew's roommate. When she sat on the grass to rest, she said very seriously, "I feel that our instructor is different from other men. In short, he is too handsome. Not only his face, but his heart is also handsome." A Jew also saw what had happened just now. She nodded her furry head in agreement. Little brother had always been so handsome since he was young. Look, even little Jew, whose boyfriend strength is off the charts, has nodded. You have to know that previously, when a Jew looked at those boys who tried to woo her, they were all. The roommate was still looking for adjectives. Another person silently finished for her, God's contempt. Yes, yes. The roommate was very excited. A Jew directly broke their fantasy. That's because their strength is not as good as mine. The instructor's strength is greater than yours. The roommate bumped into her. A Jew was stunned. Her round tiger eyes were cute and adorable. I haven't competed before, so I don't know. She didn't fight with little brother, so there was never a winner or loser. The roommates laughed together and reached out to rub a Jew's head. They liked it very much. This child is taking the joke seriously again. Chapter 1265. All right, the break is over. Everyone gather. It was Vice Commander Zhang from the department next door who was growling. He looked like an officer and was very firm when he gave orders. In comparison, Baizhuan just stood there with a tall and slender body. He casually clapped his hands, and the students of the archaeology department immediately stood up and formed a square team in minutes. That's about all for today's training. After dinner, I'll go to your dormitory. Before Baizhuan could finish his words, he only heard the word dormitory. The girl screamed. It wasn't just the archaeology department. Even the other teams were in the same situation. The soldiers were a little awkward. They coughed lightly and said, "It's to teach you how to fold your quilts. At 7:30 p.m., the instructors will knock on the door on time. Girls, be careful. Boys, hide all the smelly socks." That's it. Dismissed. In fact, these people had never entered the girls' dormitory before. In the past, when they had not entered the army, although they could play freely, they were all in nightclubs. They were both willing. Moreover, they had a bottom line and would not play too much. Therefore, until now, the members of the Problem Corps were still very pure inside. The girls turned their heads and began to whisper. Their expressions were shy, embarrassed, and a little excited. Their feelings were very complicated. The archaeology department had already stopped talking. Their eyes looked at Baizhuan as if to confirm if what he said was true. Baizhuan's voice was very indifferent. You all heard it. Clean up the room and dismiss. As soon as he said this, there was a complete uproar. The roommates pulled a Jew over and were quite excited. A Jew, did you hear that? The instructor is going to our dormitory. Yes. A Jew replied and lowered her head. She was looking at the military jacket around her waist. In order to prevent her pants from getting dirty, the little brother had helped her put it on. Or was she going to return it? Just as she was thinking about this, she saw that the roommates beside her seemed to be stunned for some reason. A Jew raised her head and followed their gaze. It was Baizhuan, who had just said that they were dismissed, walking towards them. The roommates immediately held the Jew's hand tightly and stuttered, "See, instructor." Baizhuan smiled at them, but his gaze was on a Jew. His voice was very low. Hailu will also be there for dinner tonight. Do you want to call your dormitory members to join us? I'll ask them. A Jew did not expect that her little brother would invite her to dinner. However, the fact that Li Hailu was also here made her very happy. Her tiger eyes looked to the side. His roommates were dumbfounded. If they didn't hear wrongly, the instructor was inviting them to have a meal together. No, that's not the main point. From the instructor's tone, it seemed that it was very likely that he was an old acquaintance of a Jew. Big sis, are you going? A Jew was the youngest in the dormitory and ranked 4th. She reached out and tugged at the sleeve of one of her roommates. The girl suddenly came back to her senses and nodded vigorously. Then, she realized that she was being too unreserved. She chuckled and said, "Go." Of course, she had to go. He was such a handsome instructor. and the few behind him were also very handsome. What should I do when I feel like I'm surrounded by handsome guys? The main point was that they clearly smelled the scent of JQ on the instructor and a Jew. They had a watch. However, Bai Juan's calm attitude seemed to have never minded that they were watching. On the other hand, a Jew thought of something. Will it have a bad effect on you if you take us to eat like this? After all, the little brother was now a soldier and their instructor. It's not against the discipline to eat in the school cafeteria after class. Bai Juan's thin lips curled up. He reached out and touched a Jew's head. Then he asked in a low voice, "How's your stomach? Do you want to buy some hot milk to drink first?" Hearing this, the few roommates who were single felt that their eyes were about to be blinded. Such a natural JQ was definitely not something that could be done in a day or two. A Jew, tell us the truth. What did you get to know our instructor? He even started to show off his love without a care. Bai Juan really did not care what others would think of him, and he did not care about the impact. Those who were familiar with him knew that what he was doing now was to let everyone in the school know that a Jew was his. The people from the problem corps watched from the side and shook their heads repeatedly. Shameless too shameless. In front of the entire school, the matter of inviting her to a meal was simply mastered by bluntly telling others that he had a close relationship with the little monk. Otherwise, with Master Bai's watertight style of doing things, he would definitely not mention the matter of a meal in front of so many people. He would definitely find time to meet someone in private. Moreover, when did they have a meal together? There was clearly no such item. It was simply added at the last minute, using in a blatant manner. When the problem corps walked over, they looked at Bai Juan with a pitiful and resentful gaze. Facing such gazes, Bai Juan only said one sentence in an indifferent voice. "Do you want to eat?" Of course, eating with a girl was better than looking at Master Bai's face every day. He was so handsome that it seriously affected their self-esteem, causing them to lose their appetite. Go! How could they not cherish such a good opportunity to get to know Annie Bai? At the dining table, they had to ask properly. What stage were the two of them at? Li Heilu's class was far from here. He was the last to come. He was also a person who did not care what others thought. He came up and messed up a Jew's hair. Originally, he had already made the gesture of carrying a Jew up. Bai Juan turned sideways and slapped his hand away. "Alu, this is a school. Be careful of your influence." Li Heilu was speechless. Who was the person who carried a Jew up just now? Now he was telling him to be careful of his influence. As expected, men who were jealous were all unreasonable. Li Heilu spoke to a Jew through Bai Juan. "A Jew, just tell me, do you miss me?" A Jew nodded heavily. Yes. One word actually made Li Heilu's eyes a little bitter. It turned out that she had never blamed him. In fact, Li Heilu also knew that a child like his a Jew rarely blamed others. She had been like this since she was young. However, hearing it with his own ears was still different. How much did he regret being young and ignorant back then? He could not see through people, causing 3 years of separation. Now that he had grown up, he would not make the mistakes of his childhood again. At this moment, Li Heilu finally understood what Master Bai meant when he always said that the time was not right. A Jew stretched out her claws, wanting to hug Li Heilu as well. Bai Juan, who was originally standing between the two of them, saw this and moved to the side without leaving a trace. Li Heilu smiled lightly and bent down. He hugged a Jew for a while and quickly let go. After all, Master Bai's tolerance had always been directed at a Jew. Chapter 1266. The students on the field had not finished walking yet. Even Vice Captain Zhang and the others narrowed their eyes when they saw this scene. The people from the Performing Arts Department were whispering to each other. Did you see that? Those instructors seemed to know the people from the Archaeology Department. I was wondering why the instructor didn't choose any class, but chose their class. So that's what happened. His family helped him take care of them. Even so, the instructor is too good to that Bailey Geo. Zitong, what do you think? Lu Zitong glanced over there. Her expression was obviously very ugly, and her voice was a little cold. It's nothing to rely on his family's connections. That's right. The person next to her echoed Lu Zitong's words. If it's a competition of connections, who can compete with our department? Zitong, ask your father to call the principal and ask the instructor to take care of our class more. It would be best if they could change the instructor for them. Lu Zitong also had this thought, but she didn't say it out loud. She just sank into deep thought and glanced in the direction of Bai Juan and Aju. The people on Vice Captain Zhang's side walked over and complained in a low voice, "Vice Captain, when are we going to teach those wild soldiers a lesson? I really can't stand what they've done. It's obvious that they're tarnishing our reputation as soldiers. The instructor is not allowed to get too close to the students. This is the rule. However, when I went to ask the captain just now, the captain said that it's not a violation of the rules to eat together in the school cafeteria. Those people don't look like good people at first glance. They're so sloppy after class. I don't know which unit took them in." "Don't worry," Vice Captain Zhang sneered. "Sooner or later, we'll let them know what they're made of." As dusk fell, most of the students on the field had left. However, the cafeteria became exceptionally lively. The aroma of food and rice continued to float out from inside. Aju and the others wanted stir-fried food. They sat on the third floor. Other than the boiled fish, which was meat, the rest of the dishes were vegetarian. When the dishes were served, Bai Juan deliberately asked someone to place the boiled fish farthest away from Aju. He naturally took Aju's bowl, picked up some vegetables for her, and poured some juice on the rice. After mixing it back and forth with a small spoon, he handed the bowl back to Aju. Aju did not say anything. She lowered her head and took a big bite. She ate very well, and her small face was bulging. Both of their movements were very smooth, as if this was how they usually ate. The people who saw it were a little dumbfounded. This was especially true for the problematic armies. They really couldn't believe that the gentle and patient person in front of them was their Master Bai. That Major Bai, the Jade-Face King of Hell, who made them wish they were dead? When had he ever picked up food for a woman? And he was still mixing the rice. Eat slowly. Bai Juan did not eat it himself. He turned his face to the side and looked at Aju beside him. He supported his chin with one hand and curled his lips into a smile. Then, he used another hand to wipe her mouth. Even his eyes were filled with obvious affection. The problem legions were speechless. They simply couldn't eat this meal. Unlike them, Aju's 3 roommates' eyes were full of vigor and gossip the entire time. How did Instructor Bai and Aju meet? Is it a family relationship? Someone could not help but ask. Hearing this, Bai Juan smiled and placed his hand on the back of Aju's chair. He just watched her eat. "No, we've known each other since we were young. I raised Aju." Her roommates were speechless. What kind of answer was this? Instructor Bai's words were very difficult to understand, and he never explained much. Her roommates also felt it. This person's eyes would only soften when he looked at Aju. When he looked at others, his eyes were cold. For some reason, although Instructor Bai was very polite to them from the beginning to the end, and even had a smile on his face, these 3 roommates were inexplicably a little shocked by Instructor Bai's aura. They did not dare to ask anything more. They could only turn their heads to look at Aju, who was still chewing on the rice grains. Aju raised her head. Her beautiful tiger eyes flashed like a clear lake. "I was indeed raised by little brother. Little brother started to adopt me when he was 9 years old." Adoption? Her roommates were shocked again. Adopting someone else at the age of 9? After hearing this answer, the roommates felt that Bai Juan really could not be looked at with ordinary eyes. "Then you two can be considered childhood sweethearts." Bai Juan raised his eyebrows. Probably because he heard the words he liked, his thin lips curled up very beautifully. "Yes." Her roommates were all silent when they saw this. What kind of adoption was this? It was clearly raising her. After she grew up, she would be eaten. Originally, as older sisters, they should have reminded Aju. After all, Aju was obviously very weak in front of Instructor Bai. However, looking at Instructor Bai's appearance, they really did not dare to say anything. The soldiers patted their own heads regretfully. Why didn't I think of adopting a child when I was young? When she grows up, she can be a wife. Master Bai's trick is too deep. Li Hailu glanced at them. Don't talk about when you were young. Now that you look at a child, Don't you have a headache? Headache. The soldiers were very self-aware. We can't raise children, but the books say that brothers with younger sisters are usually very gentle. Why don't I feel Master Bai's gentleness? Li Hailu agreed and joined the collective crusade. Bai Juan slowly picked up a piece of vegetable for a Jew. Then, he wiped his hands and said to them, "Because you're not my younger sisters, I don't need to be gentle to you. Also, in the future, read less books that affect intelligence." Was he mocking their low IQ? Even if Master Bai mocked someone, he had to attack from the side. It made those people unable to open their mouths. They were very sullen. In the end, the soldiers directly focused their gazes on a Jew. "Sister-in-law, don't you think that there's something wrong with Master Bai's words? To be honest, sister-in-law, you should control Master Bai. If he's always like this, it's very easy for him to lose friends." A Jew was instantly stunned when she heard these words. It was not because of these words, but because of that name, sister-in-law. When the roommates heard these two words, they were no longer calm. The one who had just eaten the chicken almost choked. This was really shocking. How did they think of using the name sister-in-law? Were all people from the army like this? A few people could be considered to have good eyesight. When they saw this situation, they were surprised. "Isn't it?" Bai Juan swept his gaze over them and said in a cold voice, "Eat your food." Chapter 1267. So it was really not. The eyes of the soldiers lit up. This situation made them even more excited than Master by confirming their relationship. Because if it was not confirmed, they could still see Master by chasing after someone with their own eyes. This was something they had never thought of before. A Jew was still biting the food in her bowl. She looked cute, and they did not know what to say on such an occasion. Bai Juan had already reached out and touched the tuft of hair on her head. It was soft and comfortable to the touch. "Eat more. There are other training at night." A Jew swallowed the food and nodded obediently. On the other hand, her roommates wanted to know the training content. Other than folding the quilt, is there anything else? Li Hailu smiled and said, "Running and standing in military posture. I will also give you a big backpack so that you can be ready for an emergency assembly at any time." Emergency assembly? When is it? They could still prepare in advance. Bai Juan only said two words, "Not sure." Her roommates were speechless. "A Jew, you have indeed changed to control your little brother." It was really easy for him to lose friends when he spoke like this. However, even if Instructor Bai's face was a little black-bellied, it was still hard for people to hate him. What should they do? "You didn't tell us the assembly time because you were afraid that it would be unfair to the other classes." After a Jew said this, she added, "If we don't know the assembly time, we can still win. When the time comes, I will drag you out of the dormitory." The roommates thought about the situation of being dragged by a Jew and immediately waved their hands. A Jew blinked and said seriously, "I'm very good at dragging people." "We know." Her roommates were unusually determined. "No need, a Jew. Just call us when you get up." "All right." A Jew, who was rejected, still felt a little regretful. After all, other than the day of school, she had never dragged anyone else. Li Hailu knew what was going on. He gave a thumbs up to the three girls. He really could not let a Jew drag people. It was like dragging a sack. Her image would be ruined. The three girls tacitly cupped their hands at Li Hailu. They looked like they were all experienced people. A Jew blinked again and turned her head to continue eating the food that the little brother had picked up for her. However, Bai Juan put down his bamboo chopsticks and picked up her wrist. His gaze landed on the weight buckle. Then, he turned his face to the side as if he was going to untie it for her. A Jew's eyes were round. "You can't take it off. If you take it off, you won't be able to control your strength and hit others. Later you will be with me, and there will be no one else." As Bai Juan spoke, he untied the gravity buckle and threw it on the table. The roommates did not know what it was, but the few people from the problem corps looked at that thing and stopped eating one after another. The way they looked at a Jew changed. Had she always been wearing a gravity buckle, wearing it during meals and training? This was simply stronger than their endurance. For some reason, he felt like he had been outdone. They were the nation's sharpest blade. They couldn't lose to a girl just like that. Sister-in-law, ahem, that. Aju, come, how about arm wrestling? Hearing this, Aju immediately sat up straight with an eager look on her face. However, Bai Juan directly held her right hand and said in a calm voice, if you want to arm wrestle, you can either wear gloves or find someone else. So the main point was, Master, Bai didn't want them to hold sister-in-law's hand. Isn't Master Bai a little too possessive? The people from the problem core turned to whisper to Lihailu. Lihailu also lowered his voice. He has always been like this. Back then, Shaolin had given Aju some gifts, but he could also throw them all back in the blink of an eye. All of Bai Juan's emotional fluctuations were used on Aju, whether it was good or bad. The problem core still did not dare to provoke Bai Juan. After hearing Lihailu's words, they silently withdrew their hands. Aju was still seriously asking for a fight. It's not convenient in the canteen today. We'll fight after the military training is over. A girl had already asked them to fight like this, so of course they had to agree. Okay. Bai Juan actually did not stop them. Instead, he smiled meaningfully. When they really fought in the future, the problem core finally knew what Bai Juan was smiling about at that time. The four of them could not even defeat a little girl. They were even dizzy from the fall. They had lost all their face. As expected, one could not judge a book by its cover. In the future, they would not dare to casually fight with girls anymore. What kind of girl was gentle and lovely? Fairy tales were all lies. Of course, that was what happened after the military training. Therefore, those people were still planning how to show mercy to Aju and force Bai Juan to come out of the mountain. Just like that, the meal was eaten with great relish. After eating, the roommates still wanted to continue gossiping with Aju. Unexpectedly, Bai Juan stood up in advance. He was still holding Aju's hand. His voice was very gentle. I still have to take Aju to a place. She can only go back later. I'll have to trouble you guys in the dormitory. It's not hard, it's not hard. The lethality of Bai Juan's handsome man trick could be seen from the reactions of those girls. The roommates put their palms together and watched the two of them leave. They thought to themselves, Aju, it's not that we don't want to deal with you. It's just that your little brother is too handsome and has too much aura. Go ahead. Even if you get eaten, it's worth it. Aju was held by Bai Juan's hand the whole way. Around 6 o'clock, the students were all in the cafeteria or dormitory. There were very few people walking on the boulevard at this time. Fortunately, this was the case. Otherwise, there would definitely be many people watching. Aju was not afraid of being looked at by others. Although university was much more free than high school, she still did not want Bai Juan to be affected in any bad way. After passing through the school boulevard, they were outside the school. Little brother, where are we going? My house. It turned out that before they came back, Bai Juan had bought a duplex building next to university. Needless to say, everyone knew why. The house was very clean and new. The glass cups hanging upside down were transparent and shiny. It could be seen that even its owner had not been here many times. The Bai family had a lot of properties. However, this house was different. It did not belong to the Bai family. It only belonged to Bai Juan. This was what Bai Juan had envisioned for the future in the past. When he was young, he had thought of buying a house that belonged to him. There was only him and his Aju in it. Whatever Aju wanted, he would buy for her. As for how young he was when he was young, it was probably when he was around 10 years old. Therefore, Master Bai was really very possessive since he was young. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.